Hi guys, this is Doc. Dr. Lariat, and host of this show. And we got a two for today. The first part of the show is State of Wrestling with my partner American Numbers, aka Tio Toro, and I want to thank him for being on the show. On the second half, you're gonna hear my interview with BJ Bethel. That's usually what I do on the show. I do called The Prescription. So we got a double header today, and I was happy to be in the preliminary match with my State of Wrestling with Turo to set up this really big interview I got with BJ. Um, you might have seen him a lot on over the last weekend on Twitter and Blue Sky or whatever you use. But I know him as a journalist. I know him as one of the best writers on Substack, and you should definitely check out his Substack because he is an excellent writer, an excellent person, an excellent journalist, and journalism is pretty much the only one of the last things we have as putting on the good fight and getting the right information out there. And BJ is a part of that. And again, I want to thank everybody for coming here and listening to this. I don't want to take up any more of your time, so please enjoy the show. And please, if you're enjoying this music, go to soundcloud.com, Nico Angelo Music, NIKKOANGELOMUZIK on SoundCloud for more beats that get you off your seats. And thank you. Please. Hey, this is Road Warrior Doc, aka Dr. Lariat, aka Royal True Orange Cassidy, aka Ube Lashley, and this is the State of Wrestling with my partner here, American Numbers, Numeros de America. Bienvenidos.
Now I'm gonna do like the Spanish intro in my announcer voice. Bienvenidos a una edición especial del Estado de la Lucha Libre con el doctor del mal y con el anunciador de la verdad aquí desde el internet. How was that?
Yeah, that was great, man. This is the best news
Yeah, I
wrestling
call that I call that
podcast.
my I call that my I call that my Hugo Savinovich voice. Credit to him who like you go like this and you start talking like a radio announcer and go like, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen," and
Yeah.
now we will play
I,
Miss
I,
Bye Bye Miss American Pie.
I love his brutal calls. I love
Ah,
when Hugo does the brutal.
well, see, Hugo's great because like I remember Hugo was like the number one heel in the territory. Like he was like heat, heat, heat. He had like his Abdullah and Kintonga were his like so Ming. So his Ming and Abdullah was his heel faction.
Wow.
That is like a bad like the stories with Ming is like Ming. There's this great story where like there's this brawl in Puerto Rico. Like Ming started in a bar, and the cops came like 20 cops came to arrest him. The cops had to leave because they couldn't arrest Ming. They're like, no,
Yo,
they tried,
yeah,
and Ming was like, no, you're not
yeah,
arresting me.
man.
And yeah,
That's a
like the
big bad
stories about
Tongan brother, man.
it's a big bad Tongan Samoan brother. Like sorry, not Samoan, so sumo. He was a sumo too. It's like, gosh,
Yeah,
dude, that was
yeah.
a complete
So
badass.
no one was gonna knock him
Um,
on his ass, dude.
So actually, like we're doing this because we have a special request for one of the guests that, like, one of the very exciting guests that Doc has on his pod, who I would have loved to be on with, but I had other things going on. But like Doc did an excellent job, and one of the things we want to do is kind of like people wanted to hear us talk a little bit more about the state of wrestling, so we're going to do that. We actually had a
Yeah.
good 20 before this, and hopefully we can replicate it because we have these great conversations off air, and hopefully I try to make sure that we get it back, but sometimes it's hard. But we're gonna try.
Yeah.
We're gonna try.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Toro because like he helped me really. I'm one of the guys that helped me prepare for this. I'm gonna thank Toro for having me these questions and letting me like open my mind to what to ask. I want to thank Mora for her encouragement and like she also gave me ideas and like let me know that I was on the right path. And I want to thank my brother Tay for also giving me those questions about freedom of speech and like and anti-intellectualism and all that stuff. So I want to thank you
Mm.
guys all for like helping me on like forming my questions because this was a big get for me. And honestly, uh, BJ, as you can see in the title of this episode, he is BJ Bethel is not just a wrestling writer; he is an actual journalist, and I respect him and the work he does because journalism is kind of like one of the last ways we can fight oppression and inform people. And I feel like what he does on the outside, just giving information, is very important. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I totally
I love to. I just want to thank Toro for like helping me and like formulating like the kind of questions I wanted to ask him because I knew he would have he I would have loved to have him because this guy is my partner. He's like one of the best guys to like do this show with. And I know my audience here loves loves when we give all these numbers and gives all this data and like loves to have us espouse because we love to talk. But yeah, man, I just want to thank you, bro. It was like it made it
no,
easier
thank you,
for
man.
me.
I'm looking forward to listening to it. Like, there's some hot stuff in there, and from the preview that Doc gave me, like, I'm very much looking forward to like listening to it and like it answers some questions that I had
Yeah,
that I want to answer to. And I think give yourself credit. I think you do a great job, and I think that hopefully we'll keep moving this forward, and it'll be like a good deal.
yeah.
Oh,
Um,
so state of wrestling. I got a take, right? So, I'm gonna kind of play on what we were talking about before. So, we're gonna talk a little bit about the whole Gail Kim thing,
ooh,
and I'm going to talk about it in a way that isn't. I'm going to address the important part in the rooms. Like, so the important parts of the room to me are not really what she's doing, which to me is just a basic grift. I think she's just trying to get to the anti WWE grift, which funny, which is like she's doing it like 5 years too late because at this point the
yeah,
people who are doing that, a lot of them are moving to like, oh, there's all this wonderful wrestling out there because they kind of like see the. We have a mutual friend who kind of like basically made this point, and he was spot on. Frazier, and he was
yeah,
like, essentially, people haven't realized that really kind of AEW's kind of won the war they need to win, whereas there's nobody in a WWE who you want outside. There's nobody in WWE I need to see good wrestling or see great wrestling. They're all elsewhere. They're all they're in the right place doing the job, and there's no need for me to like follow that other like to laughs occasionally. Occasionally I'll go there and like watch it, but it's just I don't need it. There's nothing I'm missing by doing that, right? And if they didn't even have the Lucha girls and the Joshi girls they brought out, that it would be even worse. But
yeah,
getting back to Gail Kim, the reason why I think this has been a whole thing is she is not holding up kayfabe. But here's how she's not doing it. I don't believe she is sincere, right? I don't believe this is not. I don't think this is coming from a sincere place, right? Maybe it is, maybe
yeah,
it isn't. But she isn't doing it for those reasons. She's doing it because she thinks she wants to get to this like grifter space, and she's picking what she thinks is an easy target. I don't think she's put that level of thought into this because, like, we were talking about this before. Like, the brothers who were doing this, you said their name. The brothers who
yeah.
were doing they're doing this great documentary on deathmatch. These are respected filmmakers. This is
The Philippou Brothers. Yeah,
yeah, they're real hardcore artist guys, and one of them is like a big deathmatch guy. He does the deathmatch stuff, and the reason he does it, he comes at it from a place from performance art, right? Like if you see people who are performance artists, right? People who are serious, high level, like super geek, will get shows on the Met. These people will see like a death match and immediately understand. Like they'll see like something like the FMW death matches that we've raved about before, and be like, holy shit, that is art. That is performance art at the highest level because like there's emotion and there's like a physical performance and there's like an experience that you're trying to relay. And something like you watch something like that, which is like Zone 23. If people aren't familiar, like the big lucha deathmatch stuff that goes on as a cultural thing in Mexico, is a big kind of like it's tied to like Festival de los Muertos, and it's tied to local tradition and the Aztec War. There's a whole kind of culture around this, which
yeah,
makes it a much deeper thing than like just like a couple guys like hitting each other. And look, I'm not devaluing wrestling. I'm saying like this culturally has like a lot, this whole meaning as like as I said, like a cult, like a somebody who's a serious performance artist will see this and go like, "Holy shit!" They will respect the hell out of it. Like you'll see somebody like
yeah,
David Arquette, and I'll bring him up where like he came back and he did the deathmatch stuff because to him, I mean, I'm kind of interpreting, but I've seen some of his interviews, like as an actor, right? The performance aspect of it, right? The whole kind of passion, the whole kind of like living this experience and sharing it with an audience is
Yeah.
very visceral and very like artistic thing. So like it's kind of a weird thing for like somebody to come in, oh, I don't get that. It's like, okay, fine, but you like disrespecting the culture like that is very disingenuous to me, right? Given kind of like her experience, which she is, like it doesn't come off as honest. And I was basically telling Doc, I was like, when we hear somebody like Maven or somebody like Lance Storm or somebody like Stevie Richards come at it, I
Mm.
kind of feel like they're coming at it from this is who they are, right? I can respect that they're
Yeah.
not gonna have the same opinion of wrestling as I am, but like they're coming at it from a place of honesty as a fan. And this is, I think, where kind of everyone's like, like the sigh, like look at her. Like one, she's coming late to this, and two, nobody believes she's honest about it, right? And
Yeah.
that really, honestly, as wrestling fans, we want to believe, right? Like the whole immersion, the whole experience, right? Like bringing it back to like performance, like you want to go into show and just like be in the show, be in the moment, and if you can't sustain kayfabe, you can't sustain that disbelief, then you fail, right? So this whole thing kind of like is, I mean, I don't think she's a very good worker either, but like this is, I've seen her finisher, right? I've seen her work, and like kind of going
Yeah.
like this is why this has landed the way it has landed. It's a really interesting moment to me because she's doing it in a moment where like I mean, she's going the wrong way, and I understand why she's going this fine. She couldn't get hired, BJ will say like she couldn't get hired in AEW, and she's trying to like get into the grifter space, but it's a really weird kind of place because I was actually thinking
Yeah.
about it and go like, with her kind of camera presence and kind of like she's person who looks good on camera, does good new media. She could be the person who like takes people to these like new places and new different things and new experiences. And if you think about it, it's like I remember like shows like Wild On where like you had like the
Yeah.
travel show, somebody's going on this, or like somebody's like going and doing this video log and telling the
Yeah.
story, and this would be like a much more interesting kind of space than where she thinks she's going to me. And there's really kind
Yeah.
of there's people who are like, I think, what's the name, Dante Turo was doing it on Twitter, where he's like going off and watching all these 5-star matches he's never seen and doing videos like whether they're sincere or not, it's fine, but he's taking the time to present these like great matches to his audience, right?
Yeah.
Which is fairly normie audience, right? So he's trying to like broaden their horizons. It's actually really interesting, and that to me has some value, right? It's,
Yeah.
but I
Cause,
mean, like, like, right?
cause like she was commentating. This is the old grifter thing from 5 years ago, right? Take an out of context spot and say that's not wrestling, that's not art. What's the purpose of this? There was no reason. This is just stunt so bullshit, right? That's 5 years ago. That's like everybody on Twitter, everybody like saying like the old Reg saying like, oh, but when I did that spot, it meant this. Like you heard like older
Well,
wrestlers
but
like
here's
say
here's
that
the
stuff.
thing. You know what we say? It's about sexy death, right? So,
Yeah.
what is more sexy death than like somebody like diving through a pane of glass in a like just this? I would say like one of my guiding rules to this is like, would Terry Funk have respected it and found it cool? And the
Yeah.
answer to me on this is like, hell the fuck yes. He probably would have tried. He would have tried to like do that spot. He was like, or Darby. Like I think a good modern call is like, would Darby find that cool? It's like yes, Darby would find that cool, and
Yeah.
like Darby would integrate into a match with like Sting and the Bucks probably. So yeah, I mean,
And like I just you know like it kind of also like snowballed into like the whole Riho attacks, and I think that wasn't her like really attacking Riho like as like a performer and all that. I think she was just trying to look for people to get onto her side more as her like what you were talking about, her actually believing all that junk. It didn't come off like that at all. It came off more like her trying to like get likes and farm all that stuff. And like she has a
yeah, she's
history of
farming.
like
She's
she has
farming
a
all right,
his
and I get it.
yeah. Yeah, I get it. I mean,
And
she has a history of like detailing like how she felt abused in WWE and all that, right? That's been kind of like her bread and butter. I mean, I know like some other guys we talked to in other discords. I know I'm gonna name him right here. David Bixenspan. I don't think he was really coming to her defense in sort of some ways, but then there was other things like that she was saying. And personally, like, because, to the audience at large, I am also an Asian man, an Asian American person. And usually, like, when we have comments from an Asian woman saying, "Oh no, that person's just a little girl being presented at and then sexualized," it's kind of like, okay, but like in 20 years ago, you were in WWE, you were small, you were also in a schoolgirl, you were literally in a schoolgirl
Well,
outfit and being paraded out there. That was
what was the
against your
line?
will. And like, I'm just like,
What was the line I used? I said, "This is a female wrestler who's never seen Sailor Moon."
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think she's past the age of that, but it's just like, when I think
But you,
about
but no,
it,
what I mean. Let me explain. What I mean by that is the whole thing. She's the whole complaining about the outfits and talking about like that and how that, and really misses the point that that is a cultural and how
yeah,
like female superheroes are presented in the culture is
yeah,
like that, right? So there's a whole kind
yeah,
of it's like it's the same thing. If you actually watch the guys do the same thing, you'll see the guys like in Dragon Gate do the same thing. They're basically
yeah,
dressing like Sentai, right? They're dressing
yeah,
like Ultraman
yeah,
or like
yeah. They're just
Kamen
like,
Rider, and there's a whole yeah,
yeah,
it's a whole thing.
like
It's like
it reflects the culture, like in that way. Like Tanahashi dresses like whatever common writer is the current common writer. His tights always reflect whoever the common writer is. Same with
yes,
Ryoya, his bastard son, and like, the women and like in TJPW, like, like Mew, like, women like Riho, um, their dress reminds you, like, yeah, of a Sailor Moon, of Cardcaptor Sakura, of what's modern day right now is like, you know, Little Witch Academy, or like, what's that one? Pretty Cure, right? Because I know,
yes, yes.
and like, this is like, that's what they wear when they go into battle, and like, it's just like, it makes sense to me, it makes sense to you, but like, to wrap it back around to like being like a schoolgirl fetish sort of thing, and I'm just like, come on, like, you don't honestly really believe that. And I'm just like, I wish you would
I'm not.
be.
You're not mad. You're disappointed. I
Yeah,
get
I'm
it.
disappointed. Like, as a fellow Asian, right? As like Gail Kim, for all her work, right? In our community, in my community, we like see her kind of like as a pillar in pro wrestling, because she was able to make a name for herself and able to like do that. And we don't see like many like North American Asians, Asian Canadians, Asian Americans in the kind of spot that Gail Kim has. So like, for me personally, it was disappointing to see her kind of comment on a fellow, someone that came over here, came over to America. I don't know if it's sure if like anybody explained like the whole thing. Like, she came over here and she was like kind of taunted and bullied, and like, she's not even the account on Twitter is not even ran by Riho. It's ran by her Japanese management, and they had to send out like a message saying like they will no longer take DMs because they kept getting the abuse. And I like, that's the whole thing with Riho. And Kenny Omega says that thing, doing the splits for WWE. Um, for me, that was kind of a, I don't say that was a harsh comment, because you don't know who he's talking about, right? You don't know, because there's so many people
I mean,
doing the splits for WWE. But
I
it's
think there's
just,
there's there's a very and it lands, which is like they don't respect kind of the culture or the art. So
yeah,
they don't respect the performance. They don't respect the art or the kind of where it's coming from. Right, there is a whole background where this is kind of it's a common cultural touch point. It's like it's
yeah,
every indie wrestler doing the Eddie spot, right?
yeah,
It's like or like grab a hold, baby. Like so, there are things that are just kind of or like the whole thing that the Hulk spot, where like you're getting choked out or sleeper hold, and you do the hand in the
yeah,
air and you come down, hand, and then there's a whole kind of shared language, right, or shared mimetic language. Boy, we're getting like into deep shit here, but hey, shared mimetic language, which is understood and
yeah,
it's iconic, and people who are fans of this, and I think that's like I think part of this, which like it's kind of frustrating because like people who are wrestling fans see this and most of them understand it. I mean, like most of them, in particular, like if you go luchas, like somebody's wrestling like a sailor girl, you're like, yeah, I understand that she's meant to be a baby face, right?
Yeah.
And there's a whole kind of thing in common language that was referred to that makes the experience kind of more kind of holistic. And God, I'm getting so technical here, but like, so there was this class I took. I took this class when I was at Harvard, and it was called like, they used to jokingly call it Heroes to Zeros, but it was about like Greek myth and Greek theater. And it was talking about how you have to like to place yourself and understand the theater, which is kind of like wrestling. It really was. I mean, like there was a whole audience participation in the chorus, and the way that worked is like people were embedded in that, but there were these things that you were expected to know as the audience, right? So like they knew it's like it's like the whole this is wrestling, but people like know the chants and like know the kind of spots, and they know their place and they're part of the performance. And really, that's kind of what's happening here. There's a whole kind of expectation that the fans are going to know this, and it's going to enrich their experience, right?
Yeah.
Which again is rooted in this whole kind of like theatrical tradition going back thousands and thousands of years, right? So this isn't a new thing, which is what's frustrating me. This is like kind of the way you do theater and performance, right? And to be a performer and not get it, right? Or not even like even if you don't understand it, not bother to like just dismiss it out of hand. Like this is one of the things that just made me complete. Like there's many things that made me just kind of like go with Cornette, just lose it with Cornette. And just go like I can't listen to this guy anymore. Like outside of like
Yeah.
I'll listen to him like on some historical stuff, but like some of that with Cornette too is I think he's disingenuous about it because some of the stuff he complains about I've seen him do with the Midnight Express. Like he'll talk about comedy angles and whatnot. There's this great
Oh
match with
man.
him and the Midnights and the Midnight Riders, which is like, oh, they will fight anybody, and then like it's Dusty and Magnum and Mask come out, and there's this
Yeah.
whole thing with like him and Beautiful Bobby just like doing like comedy to the camera. There's a whole like a, and they were really good at it. Like so he would come out like, oh, comedy wrestling. I'm like, I don't think you actually believe that, Jim.
Yeah.
I think you're being disingenuous because I've seen you do it. Like, you're enough of a historian to know that like the great comedians in wrestling are great, incredible wrestlers. Like Terry Funk, I've seen do so much good comedy, right? Like, and it's really hard to pull off
Yeah.
like credible comedy, like do it and have people still stay in the performance. Like State of Wrestling. I don't know. There's this great. I don't know. You saw it. You saw. Did you see the DDT title match with Yoshihiko, the doll? Did you see that?
Yeah. And yeah.
Where he's doing the suplex with the. Oh God, it's so
Oh,
good.
he's doing the rolling Germans. Like
Yes.
that. It's phenomenal. Like those guys in DDT, and I know he what's his name? Hirota. He
Yeah.
he's like he's been one of the fun guys to watch because I talked to my friend Emily about him because she used to live in Japan and like that was one of the acts that like spoke to her. And like when we're talking about her, like we're talking about like 22-year-old, 23-year-old young women, you know. And Hirota's a pretty attractive guy too. Let's be honest here. And like that stuff, that comedy stuff, that hits with certain
But see,
audiences.
again, God, the line is people think that comedy is easy, but comedy's hard. Comedy's so fucking
It's
hard,
so
and
hard.
like
It's
particularly
so
in
hard to
something
make
like
people laugh.
wrestling, like people who can credibly like turn the switch of doing the comedy bit and then like switch back to violence, right?
Yeah.
It's like so like because the match I like I'm going back to Terry Funk. The match I always call out. There's this great match with Terry Funk and Barry Windham in Puerto Rico. It's a tournament to crown the Universal Champion, and he's doing comedy. Like it's a match. If you've never understood why Barry Windham was considered one of the best wrestlers in the world for like a really short window, go watch that match because Barry Windham is like he's out of this world in this match,
Yeah.
and Punk is doing comedy spots on the outside, which I mean he would always do in Puerto Rico because the crowd loved it, so he would play the crowd and do some comedy spots. So there's like the big ha ha, but then like he's still being very Funk, and at the end of this match, after he's done these comedy spots, and he wins the match. And he does this interview with like Hugo Savinovich, getting back to Hugo, who was the announcer at the time. And he's been doing the comedy, people have been laughing, and he just starts talking about the dead brother of Rick Martel, and cuts like one of the most evil promos
Yeah.
of all time. Like if you're a wrestler, you have to see this promo. And he grabs Ugo while he's doing the promo. Like Ugo's all nervous, and like Funk grabs him by like the back of the neck, like he was a kitten, and just like grabs him like you would a kitten and just holds him up right? And Ugo like freezes, and it's so good. It's so fucking good because it's like in that moment, like Ugo just reacts like,
Oh
"Holy,
man.
what's like? Is he gonna kill me?" And like it's just a switch from that, and like being able to kind of turn that on and off. It's this is why I say he's the greatest of all time because like being able
Yeah.
to do that, right? And again, it gets us back to like what we're talking about performances and culture, and like he would adjust the style to the crowd and kind of play to the different. He understood kind of what
Yeah.
the Japanese crowds would expect, the Puerto Rican crowds would expect, and kind of would was able to kind of go in and out and adjust that, and that's what makes you great, right? So
Yeah. Like,
ultimately, it saddens me when somebody who is kind of should be a senior statement, right, or senior state woman
yeah.
is not taking the time to respect kind of people literally bleeding and suffering for their art, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
like this is the part where I'm like, this is where I'm like, I said I'm going to take it in a different way because I do think it's kind of important, and sometimes it's not about like the thing about this is like the thing with it, and I think it's a general thing with what is TNA, what remains of TNA now, the people who are there. I'm gonna make a generalization, but I think it's the idea that like you know there was something noble in at least trying to do it, and it was bad
Yeah.
and it didn't work. And I used to work for Anthem. I was an Anthem employee. I experienced with Anthem. Anthem is a company that owned TNA. And I remember I was in one meeting, and the thing I was help with the technical side and kind of like how to do the video feeds. And they brought me into one meeting, and they were talking about somebody was asking about, oh, should we sell? They were like, this was about the time when the Hardys were doing the broken stuff, and they were
Crazy.
going over to WWE, and WWE wanted the footage, and the TNA guys, Len Asper, who's the guy who runs TNA, and they didn't want to sell. They did not want to like give them the footage. They're like, oh, we're not going to give them the footage. I was like, and I'm in the meeting. I'm like, and it's like the one time I spoke in one of these meetings because it wasn't my department, right? So it's a whole different thing. So, but somebody asked me, I was like, why would you not just give them the tape? Because effectively, you want the footage to be seen. You're not doing anything with it. Get paid for it, and like get it out in the world, and it like gets people to kind of understand and see your stuff. And I'm actually kind of wondering, as I was wondering now, it's like, oh God, I got them to be more friendly with, I got TNA to be more friendly with WDE. Is this my fucking fault? And this was like 6 years, obviously like 6, 7 years ago when it was like still like big heavy Anthem, and then like we split off and they went off and
Yeah.
did their own thing. But I wonder if like just because it kind of opened the gates to them kind of doing that,
Yeah.
and it was like they didn't want to do it, and I was like, dude, just take the fucking money. What are you doing? And and then like they didn't let me into these meetings anymore. By the way, after that, they're like let me in they let me into this call and they were like, "No, you can't go there." It's like I was CTO or something. I was doing something else. I was like, "Just
Yeah.
bring me in." I'm like, "Dude, just take the fucking money. What are you gonna do?" Like nobody's. They were. This is when they were doing the live streams on YouTube and whatnot. Like they would bring
Mm.
me in and try to like fix the sound on that shit. I was like, "God, what the fuck are we doing?" It's like, "What the hell?" And it's like I can't give any opinions here, but anyway, at least that was noble, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's here's the thing: we're wrestling fans, Doc, right? And we're about like the underdogs. We're about kind of people like, Eddie Kingston laboring in the indies, or like picking a guy who's working in like the third string, and maybe he gets the like El Generico, maybe he gets to the big show, and so we appreciate that. So I think that like
Yeah.
we're more liable to be disappointed by somebody like taking the low road as opposed to taking the high road, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like these
Yeah.
dudes are going
Because
out there and like, and they're basically like going out and taking bumps for hot dogs, right? Sometimes it's like,
yeah.
you gotta respect these, you gotta love these guys and respect these guys and
Yeah.
gals.
Yeah. Like this the amount of chutzpah, for lack of a better term, like it takes to like we bring up like you brought up David Arquette, right? I'll bring up a more modern time, Paul Walter Hauser to take a thumbtack table bump, coming off of winning a Golden Globe, coming off of being on in Fantastic Four. He doesn't need to be doing this free match on YouTube, but he's going in there, cutting himself up, taking these bumps into tacks and glass, and like he's a great performer, and he knows what it means to have this live performance, and it's just like you kind of you feel that energy, and there was a signs of respect there from the audience in that ECW arena that kind of like rose and like were chanting for him, and it wasn't like the ironic chanting that you get sometimes in pro wrestling. They were actually they felt for him, like they were buying into him as the underdog against QT Marshall. sorry, QT Marshall. And I'm like, the way I feel about deathmatch wrestling is I love deathmatch wrestling. You know, my favorite wrestler of all time is Mick Foley, Cactus Jack. And you know, you talk about like being able to turn that switch on and off. So like one of my favorite Mick Foley matches is Dude Love versus Stone Cold Steve Austin at Over the Edge. You know that match. You know, like Austin punches
Yeah,
his mouth, takes the dentures and stomps on him, and then throws him into the crowd. Like that's a comedy
yeah.
spot. Um,
But
and like yeah,
I respect the sacrifice and I respect kind of what people are doing. I kind of like effectively what I want people to think is, I mean, I don't know. The way I view it is I want to watch something where I believe that the performers are invested in the performance and the
yeah,
story as much as I am, right? And I think
yeah,
ultimately this goes back to like why I stopped watching WWE really as a regular fan was the Kofi Kingston Brock Lesnar match because I was watching this and I was invested in Kofi and I had put this investment into the story and the booker and the wrestlers and the promotion went like, nah, fuck it.
no,
No,
it's
we
done.
don't care about your investment. And I was like, well, okay, so if you don't care, then I don't care because it's like it just it's a silly thing. It's like gimmick
Yeah,
booking. Like you can't, you're doing this thing, and any investment I had in the universe is lost, right? So like
yeah,
and again, this is immersion is a really important thing, and this is kind of you know, really important to the fan. To me, like I want to feel like what I'm watching is done with care and done with intent and done with love, and I don't know. I mean, I think that's should be a common experience to people.
yeah.
Like when I watch somebody like Bandito or I watch somebody like Mystic or Hangman, I think that they're like and I'm mentioning people who are like up for like Wrestler of the Year this year, like or Saya or Tony Storm. Like these people are like invested in what they're doing in the kayfabe
Oh my
and
god.
giving me a performance and
Get,
like getting to the crowd and getting that
I,
emotion right, and that is again it gets back to theater. It's I forget the it's like
I
Nosos and
I
like
do wanna
having
I
this
do wanna
idea
take
of
this
like
one pause here, Toro. Like, can we give like Saya her flowers? The first
yes, yes,
Joshi match in like I think almost 30 years on terrestrial TV, and it's Hanan versus was it? It's Hanan versus Saya, right? That was the match.
yeah, she is just an
My God,
incredible, like if people haven't seen her, and like actually like fun fact about her, did you know she like I think she was like silver medal at the World Dance Championships as a junior
that
in dance.
makes
Like
complete
she is,
sense because she's
yeah,
so
she's been
graceful,
doing
man.
this. Yeah, she's so graceful and she's a performer through and through. And she's a person who kind of like it's just so good. Like when you watch it's so good. She's so like
Yeah,
again, she is invested
I,
in telling me the story. And so it's like Saray is the same way. Saray is
yeah.
invested in selling this and telling the story. And you know,
She's the
this
biggest
is
heel
what I
in wrestling
want.
right now.
And I
Oh my
don't
God.
feel like anybody, and getting to the state of wrestling, I don't feel anybody in WWE is at that level of investment, right? And I think that is a problem because, I mean, as actually, like, I'm going to give you one of my hottest takes, right? State of wrestling, hottest takes. So we're doing a Hall of Fame discussion, and I'm having a conversation with, like, some of the luminaries in the field. And I say luminaries are these people who not only have Hall of Fame votes, but these are people who are telling Dave who to put on the ballot. You know who you are.
Yeah.
Hello, you know who you are. I'm not gonna say, but you know who you are. Doc knows who they are. It's like, and we're having this conversation around EO and uh, Mercedes, right? And so it's a question about, oh, EO is the best technical worker, is a better technical worker than her. And I'm like, wait a second. And I pulled up all these matches where like they're working the same opponents in WWE, and
Yeah.
so like Mercedes got way better matches out of them. And the thing with it is I think EO is a very good technical wrestler. She's great if she's working with a good partner and they got a decent layout. But she's not a creative wrestler. She is very much if she's working with an inferior worker, you can immediately tell because a lot of Joshi performers do this, particularly in WWE. They start working at 25% speed and they do like baby's first layout, like Mary's
Yeah.
first match. Whereas Mercedes will take something like somebody like Harley or somebody like even Carmella and figure out a way to work a good match with this person. So Mercedes, I never know what to expect. Like where she works Riho, and that Riho match a couple weeks back, like against State of Wrestling, it all out. She worked. Her and Riho worked this match that was just like Riho decided Riho's gonna work like somewhat heel. She's gonna work like Emmy, just gonna beat the crap out of her. It's like this is a
Oh
really
yeah,
interesting, just very different match,
those
and I was
double
so
stumps,
hot for
man.
it because it was like it's like she is going to work a different match and she's going to figure out a way to work to make her partner look better.
Yeah,
And ultimately, I think that makes her a better worker, right? I think Io
yeah,
is better technically, but I think from a holistic worker perspective, Sasha is way better. Like I think
oh yeah.
Mercedes, and again, like this is me kind of
She,
realizing. I think she is probably the best worker we've ever had in the U.S. because again, she's worked really great matches with some really terrible workers, right? She's figured out a way
yeah,
to get it, and like that creativity and that difference. She's always like, I remember she worked this high speed match with like ASM, and I forget who else was in that match. And we were like, oh, she wasn't, but she went out and tried to work this high speed match, and like she got into it. By the end, she had it, and like being willing to work all these different styles is a very Funk thing, right?
yeah,
Terry Funk, right? So Terry Funk again, work the different style, adjust to the audience, make the partner
yeah,
look good. These are all skills that translate to being an all-time elite worker, and this is
yeah,
why, to me, like, and again, I was within my brain, I'm going like, no, Mercedes is a Hall of Famer, regardless of anything else. Just her level of work, right? More than just the technical. I'm
dude.
talking about like
This,
her creativity, like doing different. Like imagine like the thing I was thinking about. They talk about like taking somebody out of the equation. How would wrestling history look like if
yeah,
you take her out? Like Sasha doesn't exist. So
you
we were like,
lose.
oh, but they had good matches in like Glimmer, and I was like, okay, but you had good matches in Glimmer. If you take Sasha out, then there's no real women's revolution because like what is the
Yeah,
best match like Asuka Bailey, and that's fine, but that's not a great like that's not you're losing like the most important match for women in the U.S. and then you're losing all her work she did to make Charlotte look better and to make
yeah, dude.
Carmella look better and to make Lacey Alexa Bliss look better and like make all these
Lacey
people like
Evans.
and Bianca and
Oh my
like
God,
all these people
Nia
who like are not good
Jax.
workers. Like if you take Sasha out of the equation, wow, like you're setting women back, women wrestling in the U.S. back like 10 years,
Uh,
15 years, because like it just never gets to that level of work. And now, yes, eventually you brought in the Joshis and you raised everybody raised the level, but it was because Sasha was out there making everybody look better and everybody
dude,
work better. And she's a really, if you take her out, like I don't, she's a really kind of pivotal figure to me. And I'm
I
like,
yeah,
and I
dude.
hadn't realized until I started thinking about like funk and I started thinking about Death of the Artist and I started thinking about like performances and like how she always surprises me and works a match that is like the other match that I think I love more than probably anybody else in the world is her match with Stephanie McCur, right?
Oh yeah,
Because we
from
watch that
last year,
match,
that was
yeah.
insane. Yeah,
The thing about that match is the crowd does not want to boo Mercedes at the start of that match.
yeah,
Like the crowd is the alignments are fucked in that match, and she knows this. So Mercedes knows this, and she works the entire match, and she has it is a masterclass in crowd manipulation because by the time that match is ended, she's made Booker a huge like the crowd is in love with Booker, and it's
yeah,
all on Sasha just kind of leading Mercedes leading. I'm calling her Sasha and Mercedes, but like she leads the crowd by the hand and gets her what she wants, and that is
dude.
the kind of thing that only there's like a handful of people that can pull that off.
Yeah,
And honestly, again, that's like again, I've gone on like state of wrestling, but I'm like saying like my interpretation, like I've come to the idea that she is one of the
I
great workers, right? And
yeah,
it took me kind of like thinking about everything holistically to get there, right? Like, wow, she
yeah,
is such a kind of again it's she's so creative and she's so different and she like if you look at her matches with Charlotte, she never works the same layout when she works these matches, and you watch like 3 or 4 or 5 of them, and she's always telling a slightly different story and she's always going for something else, she's always
dude.
throwing a different trick, she's always trying something
I
different, and that really is what makes the greats, right? And I think
yeah,
that and again, nothing
dude.
against Io,
The
right? But
the match with
Io, I
Riho,
don't get that from Io,
that match with Riho, I
right?
think that's like the first time I've seen her work like as a power base in like any sort of like match because like they were saying on
Oh no,
commentary.
see, I thought
You,
I thought that match was gonna be her working like her boyfriend, like she was gonna work like the Beast
Mortals.
Mortis, right? Which she
Yeah.
did. She worked like a power base. But the twist was that Riho came out working like Emmy, so Riho came out working like Hawk, right? So
Stiff.
Riho was working like that, like just like I'm like a flyer, but I'm a stiff flyer. I'm gonna kick you.
Yeah.
And so the match is like, and then like Mercedes is kind of doing the cowardly heel bit. She's doing power base and cowardly heel. So it is just such a good fucking match. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
god, where did this come
It's
from?
so
And I was
good.
actually like mad at the crowd because the crowd had no idea. It's like this very normie WWE Toronto crowd. When I say normie, it's like this is a crowd that's like more used to regular, and so
Yeah.
they just couldn't follow along, and they weren't live because of like the earlier bad matches, and
Yeah.
so they weren't up. Like that match was so good, and they weren't up to it.
Yeah.
And then I mean, like the match after that was the three way, and the three way is like Dorada and Okada and Takeshi are going like, no, no, no,
Generational
now you
talents,
will get
man.
hype. Yeah, but they were like, this is like a match where like three guys come out and go like, this crowd is about to get hype. Like they were
Yeah.
not having it. There's a spot in that match where Dorada stops, right? He's gonna do like a dive. I think it's on Okada. I remember, and he goes up in the crowd. And he stops. He looks at everyone. He just goes like he just starts going cheer, cheer, like just brings them, and everybody in that match was like on point. After that, that pay per view is great, but it's like a really
Yeah.
again crowd manipulation, and again
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about. It's like
Yeah.
the
We're
state of
talking
wrestling,
about
right?
like we're talking about being able to believe in the wrestlers, and I know like wrestling is like it's a charade, like it's a performance. But the best performances
I
make you
mean,
believe in that. Like when we talk about
that's exactly right. But
movies,
they make you feel things.
yeah, you have to feel
And
something.
and
Like
and
when we,
and this is why we're in the risk that like I think WWE might not have anybody in the top 10 for Flair Fest this year because there isn't anyone there who is making me feel or makes people feel genuine emotion,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Sorry,
They're all
Cody,
like
you
if
only
we
worked.
again,
Cody's worked less matches, worked as many matches this year, singles matches as I think Roman this year.
is there let me ask you an honest question, Doc. Is there anyone in WWE that makes you feel has made you feel a more honest emotion than like Brody King this year?
Brother, you know like you know me. I'm a huge John Cena fan. Like chain gang soldier since 2003, and like this is the least invested I've ever been in John Cena, and like that hurts
Oh
me as
God,
a
let's talk
fan.
about what we haven't talked about. Like, I
But
talked about this. We talked
hey,
about this.
hey,
Remember, I
well,
said we did this. We did a solid 20, and I did a rant
yeah,
on Cena and Lesnar, and a certain podcaster we both know and love was like going on about how Cena Brock is this old territory match and the
yeah,
old territory cyborg. Hello, Joe Lanza, and I was like, okay, Joe, and I was like, I saw him reading it and saying it. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna watch it with you. So I did a watch along, and I pulled up WrestlePalooza from my favorite Chinese streamer who had the same resolution as ESPN, which is good
holy
touch.
moly,
And so I'm watching the match, and okay, so they're doing a play on the Heat match they did for Suplex City, where like Cena's like Brock's gonna come out, he's gonna beat up Cena, right? Because Brock's this monster, he's a monster heel, he's gonna establish himself as a monster heel. Cena comes out with the kids, which is good. I think it's good, but they didn't go far enough. I was saying like, and I said this when I was watching, like they should have brought out like a Make a Wish kid in a wheelchair who says, "John, win it for me," I'm dying, win it for me, right? That kind of thing. Just like very old school, kind of like the kind of thing Memphis would do, right? So like Jerry Lawler, like and some kid, fine. It's like okay, so John goes to the ring and then they work this match, and it's not a great match. Neither one of them can really kind of go anymore, and it's not this great match. John can't really sell the beating he's getting. He can't really bump like he used to. And then it's like Brock wins monster, so he beats him up, wins. Brock says, I'm going to beat you up. And Brock starts beating him up. And where it gets bad is one, they already did this like much better with the Suplex City thing. But then Cena can't sell it because what does Cena have to do, Doc?
he has to get his heat back, brother. He has to come back.
Well, he has to get his heat back, but he also has to work more retirement matches. He can't
Yeah,
sell a beating. He can't do a stretcher job. He can't
he's on
do the.
limited dates,
I was
bro.
saying like he can't do the Kenny Omega blood capsule in his mouth and like, oh, my tummy hurts and like just start bleeding and like do something or like have the fans and the kids crying. He can't do that because
No,
he has to like leave on his feet because he needs to leave on his feet because he's like, he's got to have a match with AJ, right? So he's got to show up on the
yeah,
TV because he's doing a retirement tour. So it's the wrong spot to do it. It's just wrong. The heat's wrong. And So it makes Brock look less because Brock tried to beat him up, but like Cena walked away from the beating and like wasn't visibly hurt. Recovered like 5 minutes later. Like he didn't sell that beating. He sold that beating for like maybe 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And
And then you wait to the crowd
and
and
I was
said,
saying like I
"I'm
was saying
fine."
to Doc is like the way they should have done it is they should have done like Brock goes, beats him up, goes to beat him up to deliver the beating, looks at John and laughs and says like, "You're not worth my time, old man," and just walks away. And if you do it that way, then you're establishing it because you're never going to have a return match. So like you kind of like you can let John get his heat back and go like, "Oh," but then like you didn't deliver the beating that like then John no sold. So it was like a really kind of bad. It was like I had like a 2 I had 2.5. I was like this match what it was trying to do, it could never do because like the booking just doesn't make sense. And it brought us to the point where we were talking earlier that like nobody in this company now knows how to sell a long-term story, or like they book these moments, but they don't book these things kind of to build heat, right? So see, Heyman does, but we were talking about this and we said like, you know, the guy who used to book and know what the stories were like, you know, Doc knows who he was. Who was he? The
Patterson
Rumbles. Patterson,
to
yeah, and Pat. And it's a great story. Pat loved Sammy, right? So Sammy's the key to the bloodline, and the guy who loves Sammy was Pat. He loved him, and you know he wanted to build him up, and a lot of these kind of elements, you know, they're not building this, you know, like the biggest story they had that was the Sammy stuff, and then the Cody stuff, which was like built in in AEW. So they don't know holistically how to kind of tell a logical story. There was a logical story that could have been told with some tweaks, but they're not. Nobody there really knows that. And then, so again,
nobody there
it's
knows
really
that, and nobody wants to try it. They just want to keep going
right.
and kind of be on autopilot because what did they say? Like fall doesn't matter. It's only like that Rumble to Mania period where that they try to they that's the only time where they try. But like it's kind of
Yeah, but
when
there's
I
no.
hear about it's so bleak with the WWE. It's just bleakness. That's all I have with them, you know. And I'm not
Yeah,
trying to like
there's no.
you know.
It's gonna be like, you know, it's the circus comes to town, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
they're gonna have like a kind of basic match, so they're not gonna have like, and they're big moments and participation along, and it's very much like a Vegas show, right? So it's good, and it's not nothing, and some Vegas shows can be, but it isn't kind of. People get mad at me when I say this, but it isn't high art, and they're not trying to be. They're not trying to like tell me this like logical long-term story or sell me on something cool. It's just, you know, it's by the numbers, and I think,
yeah.
and as I said, like I think that that's a battle that they've lost, and I'm actually like my heart, like State of Wrestling, and this is where I'm going to close. So this is going back to that conversation. I think we've reached the point, and I think All Out kind of laid this out where AEW needs to just ignore WWE. WWE
Yeah,
can hint the boom mills and like do whatever they want. AEW should just focus on their stuff, focus on making the media
I
partners
think
happy, and focus on
yeah,
like their fans because effectively there's nothing gained. Like they've won the
dude.
I've got the talent I need. I've got a good relationship with all my media partners. I'm delivering good product. Just focus on making that better and not even worry about WWE because that, like there's nothing to be gained by getting in the mud with them. And every time WWE does something, like they look so bad in comparison because like the last two times they've gone head to head, the pay per view has been
Bro.
the product has been shit. And this particular weekend, you had just an incredible CMLL show. The CMLL show was like fantastic on Friday.
Yeah.
Like the Mystico MJF match was like a match of the
Oh
year quality
man.
match. The match after that, which was like I thought was going to be a letdown, was like just really cool. If you've never seen a Suicidas, that was like
The
an extremely cool Suicidas. And
yeah.
like if you watch that match, stay to the end because like just I'm not gonna spoil it, but stay to the end. That match is so good,
Dude.
and everything that happens after is so good. And just watch
Yeah.
it; it's great. It's just dudes. It's dudes rock. It's a very dudes rocks match.
Yeah.
And then All Out, as I said, like All Out was just such a great kind of match. And then you have like Hangman and Kyle Fletcher, and you see the future. It's just don't even worry about
Yeah.
like don't think about W. There's nothing there for you. Just ignore
Dude.
it. Keep doing what you're doing. Do your shows. Work with your partners, and it's all good. Like don't like just be the hired. Like just don't even think about it. And like
Yeah.
because there's nothing point. Like I think again another podcaster we know. I was like having this comment. They say like, oh no, they should be like the Pepsi Wars, Pepsi and Coca Cola, right? The Cola Wars. oh, they should be like Pepsi. And like the thing, I didn't get into it with him, but famously, Pepsi went bankrupt twice. And Pepsi went to Coca-Cola twice and said, "We will sell the company to you." And Coca-Cola said, "No, okay."
No.
And yeah, it happened twice. They almost went out of business, and they did the WCW thing where they offered the company to WWE. They did it twice. And eventually, what happened was that they kind of smarten up and like yeah, they do the thing, but like they focus on other business, and like really the market cap is like 80% of what Coca-Cola is, which doesn't sound like much, but like yeah, if the Coca-Cola market cap is 80 billion, then the market cap for Pepsi is 60 billion. So what do they care, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's kind of like in a vacuum, there is no value at
Because,
pursuing a fight with them, particularly when like don't get in the way of your enemies as they're making a mistake. Just let them
yeah.
do what they're doing because what they're doing isn't really working.
Yeah. What I
Or it is,
found,
but it isn't like it's working short term, but it's not working long term. Is my take with
yeah.
WWE. They're doing
Yeah.
stuff that is making them money, but they keep pissing off media partners and losing these contracts. And this whole WrestlePalooza thing is just fascinating because
Did we get
this
numbers
whole
on
thing
that
is
yet?
played out.
I don't think we got numbers on that.
Hmm?
I don't think we got numbers on that ESPN
We
rollout
never got
actually.
numbers on that. Like, see, remember we had this conversation. We said WWE, like NBC canceled got out of the WWE business and canceled Saturday Night's Main Event. And I feel like that happened, and they looked for a partner, and they got ESPN, and ESPN didn't really want WWE as much as they wanted something for their upcoming fight with the cable companies.
Yeah.
And everything about this rollout has kind of showed that this was not planned,
Yeah.
and they had to do this show. And people were like, "Why did they do WrestlePalooza?" Okay,
Yeah.
so Doc, what is the next WWE pay-per-view?
Survivor Series. I
No,
believe Survivor. It's not.
no, it's the show in Australia,
Oh, Crown
Crown
Jewel.
Jewel in Australia.
Oh shit. What the hell was the point then?
So Oh no, no, no. So here's the thing. So if they hadn't done WrestlePalooza, right, it would have premiered on ESPN with the Crown Jewel show in Australia. So they would have
Oh,
premiered with like an afternoon show in Australia, and that would have been a freaking disaster. So they needed to get something big, and then
I
in
guess.
WWE, and here's the thing: I can tell when ESPN treats something as big. And ESPN did not move anything college football. They didn't even move anything on college football in ESPN two, right? So they did not even like
Or ESPN News.
they
Nothing.
Yeah, they did the 780 to 720p resolution. They criticized it on their own air, which is kind of like fascinating. And it leads me to think, which is that, and again, I'm making a hot take on this, which is WrestleMania is on the same week as game one of the NBA playoffs. And ESPN and ABC have six game ones over like Saturday, that Saturday and
Hey.
Sunday, they have six game ones, and they run them all day on Saturday and all day on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Including like live and pre-tapes and shows. So they like WrestleMania will get absolutely zero air on their broadcast partner that
Yeah.
weekend. And
I.
here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. You know who might be retiring this year and who might be having
Yeah.
his last playoff game one?
Oh yeah, it's LeBron James, man. I
LeBron, the
think.
biggest star, like there is no bigger star on ESPN than LeBron. It's like so I'm like looking at this and like these people did not think about this because like I saw the number. Here's the numbers I did see. So Netflix had numbers for the WrestlePalooza outside the U.S. You know what happened, right?
What
Like
happened?
you had abnormally high numbers in Canada and Mexico. So everyone say
Oh.
gracias to Stephanie for telling you to use a VPN.
Hey, that worked, man. Like when we talk about those numbers, right? I think AEW All Out. I think it's like figuring between 135 and 140K buys, which means like AEW is kind of conditioning their fans to have that afternoon show, and like I think it's really good to have that afternoon show
Here's
for
the
the
thing:
American audience.
All Out had become a B show, like a B kind of second level tier show, and
Yeah.
WWE made it a big show. And the other really scary thing, or it should be scary for WWE, is the fact that they didn't have Kenny, they didn't have Will, they didn't have Swerve, and they went with Hangman and Kyle Fletcher, and Kyle Fletcher and Hangman delivered. Like this is like again, like we're getting data points for Kyle Fletcher and Hangman's like Hall of Fame case where like they're coming in and delivering kind of a big number on a B pay per view against
On a two
Cena
week
and Brock
build.
Lesnar. yeah, on a 2 week build, like with a new streamer in the mix. So no, I mean, kudos
Oh
to them.
yeah,
They
that
actually
was
did a
their debut
fantastic
on
job.
HBO Max for pay per view.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like there are all these
hey.
things kind of going, like all these headwinds, and I mean, Dave said, "Oh, this is going to do like 90,000." And I mean, I told him, I said as much on the board. I said like, "No, I think you're wrong. I think everything is like, I feel like this is a hot show. I could tell the moment like the Dynamite number came in for the build up Dynamite, which is like competition with Kyle and Hangman, came in with like almost
Yeah.
700,000. I was like, what in the world? Because again, guys, to keep it in context, for people who watch, listening to this in like, hopefully 30 years, like when I'm not here, 30, 40 years when I'm not, or we're both not here. And what I'm saying is, look, not only was the expectation was going to be low, but like when that 700 number rolled out, 700,000 K, in the context of the situation, HBO had been pushing for 2 weeks for everyone to switch from TBS to HBO. They put it
Yeah.
on everything. And so I thought the numbers were going to, and the numbers have been going down. And it's like because of the U.S. Open, and all of a sudden the number jumps up like 20%. I'm like, what? Like in the context of cable, nothing jumps up 20%. Nothing jumps up 20% when like the broadcast partner is pushing you to the streamer, not to the, and it jumped up 20%. Like, what in the world? I saw that number. I was like, oh shit, no,
Yeah.
this pay per view is going to be a success. I immediately knew it was like, no, like there's interest in this. So yeah, I mean, like WWE essentially every time they try to do kind of this counter programming stuff, they're kind of like feeding into AEW, and AEW should just keep doing what they're doing, ignoring it, doing this the counter program where they start the program and just like putting every time WWE steps in the ring with AEW, AEW should just make them look like what it is. We're gonna put this great product on, and you cannot match us. Like your product is not going to be as good, and it's not. I mean, like it wasn't even good for their audience. Like even their audience is like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's
again, as I
it's
say, it's going to be fascinating when we don't get these pay per view numbers
yeah.
or WWE. So like I was joking with somebody. I was saying like nobody in WWE is a proven pay per view draw, and they're like, oh no, but Cena's like, yeah. Cena and Brock were drawing like 10 years ago.
10 years
Like
ago.
you know, 10 years ago in the business, it's a million years. So
Yeah.
who knows? Like you haven't proven to me that you can draw this pay per view yet, and the AEW guys have, and you know, hey.
Yeah. Because those
Now
numbers
again,
are
state of
quantifiable,
the
man.
business. Like the point on this, and my follow up point, the thing I need to know after and Bethel's going to drop a thing on the numbers and confirm some stuff is, well, if the HBO numbers are true, then they should basically take the AEW live audience, the people who are selling the tickets, like the what they call the advanced staff, the people who sell the tickets for the TV shows. Yeah, those people are not doing good jobs. Um, they
Yeah.
sell. I mean, and again, I think one of the things we were talking about with some people was like, is it a priority for them? Maybe not, because they make the money from pay per view. They make the money from the TV. It's TV, pay per view,
Yeah.
stadium shows, and then the live TV. And I think the live TV they make more. They essentially view the live TV as they make money from the TV. The TV deal pay them for every show they do.
Yeah.
So the live tickets are like an afterthought, but it's really kind of telling to me that when they do a residency, the residencies do well because the promoter. My take on this is like because the wrestlers are in town and wrestlers are self promoters. So if you're sitting there in a residency, the wrestlers are in Chicago or in Philly and they're doing radio and press, and so people want to go see the show. It's a happening. It's a local event. You have these stars doing promotionals, local promotions,
Yeah.
and they can sell it. But when they do these advanced shows, like they don't, they should be sending. Kyle should be going out, like, and they do some of it, but they're not doing
Yeah.
enough local promotion to sell these shows, right?
Yeah.
This is my take.
Yeah.
Everything else indicates that they should be able to sell these shows, right? They also pick
Yeah.
like these horrible venues, but it's a weird thing. Like that's the thing I need to know. That's the thing I need to know. That's one thing I need to know. I'm fascinated to see what the hell the actual real number was for ESPN. Um, and I'm again like in the future, like I'm hoping to look back and like I want to see how this Mania is going to play out because I think it's going to be kind of like it's going to be hilarious. I think when
Yeah.
like they can't they I do not see how they get any reason like any amount of air if they're going on against like the time of LeBron James.
Yeah.
There's no like
It's
nobody like
insane,
nothing is
man.
going to get like I don't know. I mean, I don't know what would need to happen to get air on ESPN if
I
LeBron is
mean,
actually retiring. It's like
yeah.
no,
Like, cause
this,
you would think like if you get an event like WrestleMania, right? You would think like that maybe WWE would move the event like they moved it this year to
You would
I
think
think they
so.
moved it to like Easter Sunday. And like the whole point of all this stuff where it's scheduled right now, you're just kind of like thinking like, oh, but it is what it is, man. And like I do want to thank you, Arturo, for like coming on and doing this opening with me. We got a whole show in, brother. But like I want people to know like the
We got
following
guys.
interview.
You got a bonus. You got a bonus hour and 15. Yeah,
Yeah,
yikes.
yeah, because like I want people to know like the interview I did with that I that you're about to hear with BJ. I wanted Toro there with me because we we kind of do this show. We do a show that nobody else really does. I'm gonna shout out to you, Trish and Sarah. Shout out to you. No, I'm not gonna shout that out. But like it's just like when you look at things from a business perspective, from a numbers perspective, but also numbers because my partner American numbers, but also from like a fan perspective, I don't think any other show gives you what we give you. And again, like ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for joining us here on this introduction. And please enjoy this interview I did with BJ Bethel.
Y
He's the man.
ahora, la
He's a
estrella del
fantastic
show.
man.
Y ahora, con ustedes, la presentación principal de la noche, Doc con BJ. Buenas noches.
Gracias, amigo. What's up? What's up? What's up? Hey, this is Doc, aka Dr. Lariat, aka Andrew E. Kornick, aka Bon Corbin, aka Bulgogi, Bruiser Bulgogi. I messed that up, but who cares? I'll keep rolling. Stan the Lariat Hand Sandwich, aka Dolphy Ziggler, aka the Dim Sum Don, aka Cassius Claypot Rice, aka Yamcha Real Smooth Now, aka Jolly B Driver, aka Big Match John Cena Gang, aka Randy Orton, aka Royal True Orange Cassidy, aka the Flanimal Bautista. I'll walk around the fire pit of lechon, aka the Giant Boba. And with me here, ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored, so so amazed, and just so happy to present this show to you. I have with me noted journalist. He writes at SES Scoops. We have the man, the myth, the leisure. We got with us BJ Bethel. Welcome, 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 welcome.
Well, thanks, Larry. I appreciate the introduction, and I wish I had as many clever nicknames as you. I gotta say, Stan the Lariat Ham Sandwich is one I might steal that one
Yeah,
if when I'm writing. But
that's
yes,
a good
thanks for
one,
having
man.
me on. That was a
Yeah.
good one. I like all those were good ones, man. You sound like you just sounds like you're laying down a Wu-Tang type group thing here for us. But yeah,
Oh
dude,
man.
thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to let the audience know that this man is so very understanding, and he's just one of the nicest guys that I've dealt with on this kind of thing. And yeah, man, it's really an honor because I know this is going over the past, like, it's only January, right? It's only been since January. It's only like September, and like we're in a whole new world, which is kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
a lot's changed since the inauguration. I think a lot of people can say that.
yeah. But I'm gonna take us back to some good times. Take us back to like when we just had less worries, less time. I want to take you back because I want to know like how'd you get into wrestling?
I started watching wrestling. I was really young, but I didn't watch it for a long time. I think the first thing I saw ever of a wrestler was like an ad in the paper, and it had the Road Warriors in it. And then I think I was spending the night at a friend's house, and they had like a Saturday night's main event on with Hulk Hogan, and I didn't remember liking it too much. I remember there was a one. It was funny. I remember this long time ago. It's just I remember the one match I liked was Randy was Paul Orndorff versus Roddy Piper.
Oh
And they were
yeah,
brawling all over the place. They kind of looked like normal guys fighting. I didn't like the whole cartoony aspect. And then it was a couple months later, I started, somebody had Crockett on. It was Worldwide 605 TBS, and Arn Anderson was on. And he looked like a guy that he looked like one of the tough guys in our neighborhood that,
yeah,
because he reminded me of my dad and my uncles and our neighbors, the kind of blue collar guys who were really tough. They didn't look like bodybuilders. These were tough guys. These were Vietnam vets. And I remember he had the television title, and the way he held that title, it looked like the most important thing in the world. And I'm like, okay, I can get into this. I never really had, I never, I mean, before that, I remember people talking for ages that wrestling was choreographed. I don't want to say the word fake because obviously a lot of people get seriously hurt doing this. But uh, but I always had known it was, I always knew it was predetermined.
yeah,
But I never really changed how I felt about it. And to me, it kind of just boosted it a little bit because I'm like, okay, this is like an athletic art form. This is something that's very much different. I probably watched it for a year and a half, maybe, and then I got into other things. But then, around the time the internet was popping up, about 2000, 2001, I came across a news board called TWMP News,
oh yeah,
and they had a columnist opening looking for somebody who would talk about older wrestling stuff in WCW at the time. WCW was real hot. I think it was coming out of that period. And I just started writing, and then I started making people, I got a following, and I started making sources, and I realized this was something I really like to do, and then I ended up turning it into a career. Kept doing that till 2003, and I got my first newspaper job. It was a sports editor at a small daily newspaper in Ohio, and I've been doing it ever since. I've kind of bounced around a little bit between the digital side, which I started out with online, and just sports and doing news, crime, politics, environmental reporting, investigative reporting, enterprise reporting, national reporting. I've covered probably 5 or 6 Trump rallies during the 2020 election.
wow,
Um, it, you know, uh, in this day and age, there's with the economic issues with journalism, you can't, you get it, you do get it, you get to do a variety of stuff you wouldn't have been able to do 20 some
yeah,
years ago when news cool. That's kind of the plus side of it. But at the same time, it's also getting harder and harder to find opportunities. And that watchdog, we're kind of losing. So, but anyway, in a very long explanation, that's how I got into wrestling, and that's how it
oh
got
yeah.
wrestling got me into journalism. So,
Yeah, that's freaking amazing, man. With like the death of print media, and to be able to make a career out of it within the online space and doing this coverage, I think it's commendable because that kind of grind is like, I don't, if you mind don't mind me sharing, this man was working like past like midnight on days that we were supposed to record, and like I told him like it was fine because I understand when you get the call to go to work, you take that call because you should be work. You don't know when that work's gonna stop, so I understand completely, man.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, we were supposed to do this interview a couple days ago, but then I
yeah,
got held up at my day job right now. But
yeah, yeah,
I was working in Cincinnati and in a journalism aspect, and I've had to move back home because of some family emergencies. But it kind of also gives me doing that also gives me some freedom on the side to do what I want to do, and that's
yeah,
covered. I've been following up on stories I had going on there, and I've also been talking to some other places. We'll see what happens, but
yeah.
I've been getting a lot of interest online. Hopefully, I could turn a lot of that into interest into some of my more like public responsibility reporting, things like that.
Yeah. I'm happy that you brought up because I do love Arn Anderson and the way that he talks, because he talks and it's like he's making a threat, but he's not being threatening. It's like he's trying to be your friend and let you know, I'm gonna snap your neck, but I'm gonna do it and let you know that it's gonna happen, but you're not gonna know when it happens. Like that kind of stuff is like, I made a promise to the champ, Like he is so he is so one of my one of the most unheralded guys, but also one of the most heralded guys at the same
I,
time.
I I think he's a guy that I don't think Arn kind of sees himself the way that other
Yeah,
fans and wrestlers see him. I think people view him up there with Ric Flair, maybe even more so. They looked at them as like a twosome, because it was always those two who
yeah,
were always together in a horseman or in some aspect. And I don't think people realize like when I saw Steve Austin's character becoming such a huge hit in WWE, I felt like okay, this is kind of the WWE babyface version of Arn Anderson. The
yeah.
stunner was
Because
pretty
yeah,
close to the DDT he was using or the gourd buster. There was a lot of similarities between their promo style. They both had the beard mustache look. They both were badasses, and I
yeah.
felt that Austin probably used some of Arn. And I think also a lot of that was just himself. And but yeah, I loved watching Arn growing up. He was fantastic, and he was so good
There's
at beating up baby faces.
yeah.
I don't know how he
There,
ever made it out of arena parking lot, but he was really
there's
good at it.
there's only one man to beat Randy Savage, Ric Flair, and Hulk Hogan all in 1 year. That's Double A, the Enforcer, Arn Anderson.
Yes, he did. He
Um,
did that in
and
95.
like, yeah, man, that's and like when it comes to pro wrestling, there's a lot of like, I know people say like everything nowadays is pro wrestling, right? Because like politics is a circus, so everything becomes like, oh, it's not really your policies or anything like that. It's like how you connect to the people to mesmerize them and have them believe in what your takes are, even if you don't even have a real plan or
Yeah.
anything like that. As long as you can convince people that you're someone to follow, you don't have
Yeah,
to
that's
present
funny
anything.
you mentioned that because back during Trump's right after he won his first election, Lavi Margolin, he's a great wrestling business reporter. He's a podcaster, very smart guy. He wrote his book Trump Mania, and it was kind of an index of Trump and his relationship with pro wrestling and things like that. And it really gave an indication that, the world's becoming more like pro wrestling than it is, especially politics. If you go back to um, just the Republican National Convention last year. Hulk Hogan's one
Yeah,
of the keynote speakers, and he gives basically what's a wrestling promo. Trump
yeah,
seems to love that style. Dana White basically he merged pro wrestling style promos and face offs with mixed with martial arts and boxing. Um,
yeah,
we are kind of maybe that's I don't it's very much idiocracy coming into action, um but there's that entertainment, there's a capture to that. It allows people that are very charismatic and populist to kind of grab attention. And Lavi was a guy who saw that ahead of time. I think people who were familiar with pro wrestling and kind of had knowledge of politics and things that were happening online, I think they also were noticing that as well.
yeah. Because like there's this bombacity to like how people in the Trump sphere talk. There's always talk in absolutes. Like when you
Yes.
hear, whenever you hear like
I love the
those
way you put
things,
it, bombacity. That's probably the one overlining characteristic you can find in a lot of that language, whether it's
yeah,
press releases or social media or speeches or interviews. That's a great way to put it, bombacity.
yeah, because they always make it feel like you were talking in absolutes. When RFK Jr. talks about the efficacy of vaccines, it's absolutely no. These are the side effects. This is the dangers in them. We should do all that with them. But he's working in that way where he's the only one that benefits off it, regardless of like the rise of MMR, the and threats of like, because over like the past like what 10 years, vaccine rates have gone down considerably because of the misinformation out there
Yeah.
and like the rise of
You,
the anti-vax movement. We see like this rise of like being anti-facts, anti-intellectualism, where
yes.
people use their feelings and they use anecdotes. And I think like the studies that all those studies that RFK Jr. references when it comes to the efficacy of vaccines were disproven. But he doesn't lead with that. He says studies show,
No.
but his studies were already disproven. And that and like leaving those arguments out, it's like it's it's not only disingenuine, it's like dangerous and dangerous on a pandemic epidemic level because taking away the availability for like uh, COVID boosters and the amount of people that are not vaccinated, and now I know that school children no longer have to be vaccinated. Where I know back in my day, which was just like 20 years ago, everyone
Yeah.
was vaccinated because we didn't want to get sick. We didn't want to get
Well, that was the case with my two kids, and I still have one in elementary school. Like they had to be
yeah
vaccinated. They had to have their whole roll of shots, or they had to have a medical reason they couldn't get a shot in order them to start kindergarten.
yeah and like now I'm also seeing like rise in meningitis and those other kind of like ailments because like I think before they would require you to get the meningitis vaccination before going and staying at dormitories because of the
Yeah.
way that those kind of infections are spread and like
Y-
with
Some
all
of the
that
stuff that's
distrust.
popping up, like you've seen measles deaths in Texas. You've also seen been a terrific rise in whooping cough. These are things that
Yeah,
were pretty much nullified. Yeah, it's interesting because you're talking about anti-intellectualism, and there's a kind of that's kind of like a key to the anti-vax movement.
yeah,
And I see Robert Kennedy. He's kind of a he kind of wants to be this cult of personality type of figure, kind of like like maybe his uncle or his dad or were, but it's I should say uncles. But you look at his character and the things that have happened in his background. The Kennedys have obviously had a lot of issues in their backgrounds, but
yeah,
the way that the divorce with his wife and how he handled the custody battle over that, the way he handled her and her, depths into depression, his kind of this belief he seems to have that he kind of naturally knows more than the groups of scientists and doctors that are working in the United States at a time when we have some amazing sources of healthcare. And I got relatives who are alive because of this system right now,
yeah,
because of the U.S. healthcare system, and because of the developments that have happened in just the last 5, 10, 15 years. And it's real worrisome because this isn't a game. This isn't about being right on some message board. RFK Jr., if he wasn't a Kennedy, he'd be the idiot howling on Facebook and neighbors,
yeah,
and
yeah,
in their group. But this guy instead gets to run Health and Human Services.
yeah,
And I think it's just a great shame that he even got confirmed. He should have never been confirmed. He should have never been considered. But this is power politics, and they want to fuel this kind of feeling of anti-intellectualism. The end of expertise is, I think, um, William de Sauret's kind of put it in his book. But it's troubling. That's definitely that's kind of the underneath hidden cost of what's going on right now over the bigger, larger things that we're seeing,
yeah,
which is like, you're seeing some of the ICE issues. You're also seeing some of the freedom of speech issues that are going on. But, there's going to be a cost to this when it all comes out. And when when you're cutting off money to cancer funding, when you're cutting off money to that kind of research, when you're going out of your way to kind of strip areas of their intellectual brain power, and especially in health and sciences and the medical fields, when you're not putting money overseas to help fight diseases and things like that are going to make their way over here. There's a cost of that, and hopefully it's not. Hopefully we mitigate that at some point.
yeah, yeah. And to your point, when we when we start disregarding the studies, when we start disregarding the experts on this, what is the argument against all that? It's there. What is the proof? What is the evidence? Because I come at
Yeah.
things with like an like a science point of view. if you're proving your thesis, you need evidence to back up your statement, and we're not seeing evidence in the other part. And like the other thing, talking about this, like forming your own statements, theses, things, the total disregard for the Department of Education in it's like for me like and seeing like what in California it's different. We're gonna be like having our it's state they do the states' rights things where every state has its own curriculum, but it's just like what are we doing here? We're taking funding away from schools. We're taking funding away from colleges who are doing these studies, these like very useful studies, and why are we doing all this? Like, what is the point?
I
And
think it's. I think if you've looked at, I'll give you Ohio as an example. We're always up until 2010, we were in the top five, top 10 in the nation in education, and now we're usually in the high 20s, the high 30s in state ranks. And I think that's paid off. It's just people don't have critical thinking skills. I think it's also, with all the work that parents have to do, or not only do you need to work two jobs, but you have to work a lot of hours at those two jobs. So you're not spending as much
yeah,
time as your kids, helping them prepare for school. You're also not reading the paper, reading the news, getting involved in the community. Reading's a whole huge part of keeping yourself smart and up, keeping your intellectual kind of uh, brain power going and to keep your critical skills fine tuned.
yeah,
And that's not happening right now. And I think that that's been to the behest of some of these movements we've seen.
yeah.
Um, I think you can see it all over wrestling Twitter. They don't know how to put facts together in a lot of cases. And Christopher Hitchens said this best. What can be asserted without fact can also can be dismissed without fact. If
That's
you know,
that's exactly that's exactly how I feel about when I look at the wrestling discourse online, whether it be Reddit or on Twitter or on like people
yeah,
making those YouTubes or having these weirdly successful like podcasts where all they do is sprout about AEW is going out of business. There's no sense in this thing. All of that. It's just like you're sort of surrounded by not only tribalism, which kind of fuels that feelings over facts kind of movement, and tribalism exists like on many sides on many wrestling fandoms. That's just part of
yeah.
wrestling fandom is for the tribalism. Like we saw it with WCW and WWF fans. We saw it with TNA fans and WWE fans. We saw it with New Japan, AEW, and WWE fans in America.
Yeah.
There's this divide
It,
among everybody. It's just
if you go back to the late 90s on the early days of the wrestling boards, the internet kind of, because of population density, it really grew out of the Northeast first, where you had
yeah,
access. So a lot of the early days of the internet, when it was the wrestling fandom kind of deal, it was still heavily WWE, even though WCW or WWF at the time was kind of the favored company online. And there was always this kind of like cult like devotion to it, even when they were making massive mistakes. And, I remember the conspiracy theories back then was Ted Turner was hacking the ratings. He was he had he had people making fake calls into pay-per-view companies to buy pay-per-views. It was, he was doing illegal tactics to sign away wrestlers. And, I mean, the facts of it were Turner didn't really pay much attention to Vince McMahon. I mean, Ted Turner was the guy who created CNN. He revolutionized cable. I mean, Vince was kind of successful at making that look like a feud between him and Ted, but really it was only a feud for, I mean, it was a feud between Vince and the rest of pro wrestling. It
yeah,
started when he took over his dad's company and he kind of went on a rampage. He bragged to Sports Illustrated, about these 30 or 40 fiefdoms ran by these little if you ever hear the territories referred to as family fiefdoms in an interview by some like historian or expert, question that person immediately. They're just mimicking what, talking points from something. Tribalism started back then. And it's also getting to a weird point now where people have become emotionally engraved in these things,
Yeah.
and I don't know why. I'm guessing maybe there's personal issues for that. Maybe it's because of my marketing has become so clear cut, finely tuned, psychologically and emotionally. Maybe they're building these attachments up, and that leads to fans who are just really angry about anything that kind of says anything bad about their
Yeah.
product. um I've
Anything
dealt with this
antithesis
on
to yeah.
sports and politics and wrestling. It's definitely there, but in wrestling is really kind of a strange thing because because of the pseudo kind of legality of the business for years. And
Yeah.
but the tribalism's always been there. I think that right now what makes it worse is this social media, and that's added a new aspect to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you talk about things like cults of personality. I'm not going to name the podcast to have that because I don't want to give them the satisfaction. But like,
Yeah.
you, you know, like, because
There's
you
too
have
many to
people.
name at this point. There is
Yeah.
a pattern of many of these websites, many of these podcasters. There's a lot of them. They're formerly working in, let's say, the big company. They lose a
Yeah.
job, and it seems to be they just expect because of their name power or what they mean to the business that they're going to pick up another job at the other company. But I don't think they understand that that's not how this works.
Yeah.
This other company's not ran like this. I also think there's was when it comes into terms at WWE and eight and those people they're left trying to get back a job or get back into another place. And
Mm.
so then they start, kind of doing PR for them or propaganda or compromise or whatever you want to call it, for, the big company, and online and in social media. And then they say all these
Yeah.
ridiculous things. And, it kind of worked for Bruce Pritchard really well. I mean, he was
Yeah.
like, he started his podcast primarily just to try to propagandize his way back into WWE and a job, and it worked. But it's not
Yeah.
worked for anybody else. I mean, it's not worked well for Eric Bischoff. His podcast was doing well, but he still had to get a job on he had to still had to get another job.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of ridiculous. It's diminishing returns. It doesn't really work, and the worst part of it, it's also dishonest. But I think that with AEW's coming in the conscious of everything, there's also this fight of people between who love that old way of the business, of the smoky bar room and the whole kind
Yeah.
of pseudo legality of it, and almost like a mobster kind of feel. And I mean, there were some really sick and disgusting things that went along with that, and I think they like that part too. But AEW is owned by a company that is owned by Tony Khan. Is owned by Shad Khan, who's a legit businessman. He
Yeah.
was a billionaire in the auto parts industry. He owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a legitimacy coming to it, and I think a lot of people don't want to see that come.
I do have one question because I did field some questions from a couple of my buddies on that AEW front because I know like one of the things you sent out was like numbers from Max from HBO where they've been happy about those numbers, and what you're hearing about those numbers is it are they still like at that level where I mean like how can you deny that they're dissatisfied with those numbers as they keep giving them more and more and more and like it's
Yeah,
like
I haven't received any updates on that. It was hard. That was a really hard story to report. One of the reasons I reported it, this is still so talked about. It's kind of confusing to me because to me it wasn't even that big of a story.
yeah,
I wrote that over 6 months ago, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, but to me, what I wanted to find out was okay. I know these people who follow the streaming business or know how Netflix or others try to calculate things. It was like, okay, we're not going to get numbers the way we used to. And the other question is that fair to advertisers that are being asked to buy time on those platforms because they're getting just bits and pieces of stuff. The creators, the content makers, they're getting just bits and pieces of stuff. People inside the companies are only getting bits and pieces of stuff. It's very much stuff that's kind of truncated and hidden and like that. The CEO of Netflix don't even know the numbers are. I'm not sure they care. I mean, he knows what the subscribers are, but now they're not even releasing that information. So I just was trying to see, okay, what could I do to how hard, and it took 3 months of hard reporting just to
Damn.
come up for a short time span of what the average was. And to me, that was the biggest part of the story was that, this is how hard it is to get numbers on this subject. And I think, to me, there's going to be right now with the streamers having so much control of it, they're kind of really got the momentum in the upper hand. It's going to be a while before you see things change. I mean, Dave's talked about this in the past, Dave Meltzer, and that is, it took a while before Nielsen came along where there was a compromise. Well, it was like, look, we need numbers that are shared because the TV
Yeah.
networks, the big three TV networks had, control of what the ratings were. And those ratings were highly unscientific back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. You can't even imagine. I mean, even now they're still highly unscientific. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, but to me, that was the real story of it. Right now, I know that Max loves having them on there. I
Yeah.
can tell you that. I know the numbers have been really well, and I haven't had an. I don't want to give you an estimate because I've not been giving a real number,
Yeah.
and I don't think that would be
I
a
don't think
good
anybody
service.
has.
Yeah, no one's really come up with another number since then. I've actually had people contact me and say, there's no, we've not, some big people can't get a hold of that number, and I'm like, yeah, I know. That was kind of the scandal of it to me. To me, that was what the reporting was about. Was that, why is it that, if you're Nick Khan or Paul Levesque or you're Tony Khan, why is it you can't get the numbers that are the true breaking down numbers, all of them for your product that you're providing? If you're
Yeah.
an advertiser, why can't you get those numbers? I think that's something that the FCC is going to have to address at some point, but I don't think that's going to be anytime soon, especially with his administration.
Yeah.
But to me, that was kind of the real point of what I wanted to focus on in the story was just like, this is what they're doing. This is how well they're doing. I think it was important to see how well they were doing on streaming. And that was the other aspect was, you had Netflix with WWE and Raw going full streaming. You had, uh, and then you had AEW, which had suffered audience loss because, they had a lot of big time, huge creative issues for a long time. I mean, the product was not very good for a long time. And but then they kind of rebound with the Death Rider storyline once that got to rolling, and then they get okay, and they're also losing massive numbers of homes in cable. So you get to that, and okay, all of a sudden you're getting a boost of about 70 million homes from Max. Okay, what kind of effect does that have on the numbers? How does the streaming audience react to that? That's kind of the things I was most curious about. The actual, you know, in the horse race aspect of it, I didn't really care that much for. I mean, I like to see that, I think it was an indication that both companies are doing well. I think WWE's really hurting on Netflix. I mean, their numbers are down probably about 60% of what they were on
Yeah.
USA. That just
From
comes
what's
from,
reported, it's crazy.
yeah,
Because you see the
it's,
rankings that are released, and like, I think they were like down to like almost 19th overall for what's
yeah.
streamed on the
It's
platform.
this is a fight for them too that it's may not even essentially be fair because it's like with WWE they got to fight the algorithm. They're on there every week. They're not going to have a new season debut.
Hmm.
They're not going to have like, oh, we're the, how the new season of Stranger Things is all of a sudden going to be on everybody's Netflix homepage. They're not going
Yeah.
to have that advantage. Um, it's there's a lot of built-in disadvantages. The demos in Netflix hurt them because it's very kind of more different income levels, different viewer level, different viewing taste. It's more female on Netflix. That's kind of I imagine that was probably one reason why Netflix wanted to bring them in was to bolster the, blue collar male and the younger demographic a little, not really the younger demographic, but the blue collar, the blue collar male demographic a little bit, and
Yeah.
that helps there, but it doesn't help WWE because it may be giving Netflix a kind of viewer, but it's like there's fewer of those viewers to tread for on Netflix, and globally that demo even gets worse when you move to different countries.
Yeah.
So and I think that's why they've struggled in some global markets. But
Because
I
they used to do where they would hunt television deals internationally, and that would
yes,
bolster like a lot of their coverage in these things. But I know like in places like in Japan, Southeast Asia, they were put on like Disney Plus instead of and taken off of like satellite and over the air TV channels. So like
yeah,
a lot of the interest that was there in WWE Like it's not there anymore because it just doesn't exist. Whereas the generation beforehand, like we see it in wrestlers too. We saw it in wrestlers like Takeshita, all the guys in All Japan, Kyrie. Like they watched WWE growing up, but now the wrestlers coming up now are not watching that. So I
Yeah.
think like the overall global reach of the product is like is like not even like half of what it used to be like in 2010 2005 when they were doing like world tours and like selling out like pretty
Yeah.
much everywhere.
I think they're seeing Netflix will probably is the growth machine in the next few years because I know that
Mm.
WWE's focused on growing globally and they
Yeah.
also want to block AEW. And that's one reason why you're seeing their activity with TNA. They're actively working to try to get TNA a lot of those old TV deals that they gave up when they moved to Netflix.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it you know, it's either TNA eventually is either going to be owned by somebody close to TKO or it's going to be owned by TKO.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it's panning out. They're paying for everything right now. Um,
Um,
but that it's kind of a block for them as a hedge, but they see Netflix as their fuel to global growth. I think there's also that's why you're seeing the Saudi shows. That's why they announced the Saudi Mania shows. There's also kind of a private equity kind of mindset there, where
oh yeah.
they're going for the throat, when it
Yeah.
comes to cash, and a lot of these deals, it's kind of like the Fox deal when I seen it, and I told I remember being told when it first came together that there was already problems when the first few weeks of the
Yeah.
airing. It was that it was just going to be hard for them to hit the rating targets that they were expected. Um, their ESPN deals, 325, you know, 325 $1 million a year. You know, I
Mm.
mean that is
Yeah.
not a little bit of money.
That's a lot.
There, that's for was essentially going to be 14, 15, 16 shows. They got to do huge there. And you also have the issue where this is a brand new app that you're
Yeah.
going to have to get. The hope is I think for ESPN and WWE is that eventually that gets picked up almost like a carriage fee, like old ESPN was for cable. And then they just kind of have it normally and that gets paid through and they get big numbers from having these massive shows.
Yeah.
Um,
Because I think that's
and
what they were doing with Peacock. Because Peacock was being sold as part of the cable packages where you get free
yes,
access to the Peacock.
yes, you get that and you'd pay like a $10 fee and
Yeah.
you would get the pay-per-view or the PLE is what they would call it, premium live event. And I've talked to a lot of people just right now. It's like they just it's a hard sell for them to buy the ESPN app right now for $39.99 a month. Looking, from 10, 15 years ago, it's like looking at that and you're thinking, wow, I get every show for that. It would be a great deal. But you're looking at this now in an era where, okay, if I got to somehow fit that in my streaming budget. I also got
Yeah.
to, I'm also doing that for 15, 16 shows. There's also, there's some, but not a huge amount of crossover between sports fans and wrestling fans.
Yeah.
There's also, I think me and Ruben on my Rent Free podcast, somebody put this together. If you want to watch all the WWE product right now or coming up, you have to buy about $100 worth of a month of different streaming properties because they've
Yeah.
taken kind of an NFL strategy. And I think this is also to try to, monopolize the marketplace, but it's also this NFL strategy of being on as many streamers and outfits as possible.
Yeah.
And
Because
it makes it very unaffordable for fans.
yeah, my friend like he told me like okay, you get Red Zone also on like if you get the ESPN Unlimited, I think that's what it's called. But
Yeah.
it's actually cheaper if you just buy it directly from NFL Network.
Yeah.
So like, so just to let you know, like I kind of just did that because why am I gonna waste money, make some more money? Because there's so much money that you're
Yeah.
spending just to get everything nowadays, and like it doesn't make sound strategy, but it's just what they're doing, and then being trying to cannibalize the market so that they're the only ones, like they did,
Yeah.
trying to run like shows on day of, which they've been doing like pretty much all year. They've been doing that, sending like NXT or Saturday Night's Main Event day of AEW pay per views, It's like
Yeah,
obvious
the
what they're
odd
going
thing is
for.
Dave had this in a newsletter this week. If you read the Wrestling Observer, and this has been what I've seen, it's kind of hurt WWE more in several ways than it has hurt AEW. I mean, AEW's kind of found a friendly audience airing earlier
Yeah,
because it's like, okay, we can put this longer pay-per-view out in the middle of the day, and then everybody has the rest of their night to do whatever they want. All In had 180, 190,000 buys. I think All Out did around 130, 140. Um, that's and then and it's like also when you're counter programming like that, it's gonna really take a hard hit on your creative. I think that's starting to show up. Um, and it just, but the thing they have going for them is they have market power. They have, they have a huge stock price around $200 a share. And maybe higher than that now. I'll have to go
yeah,
check. I haven't checked in about a
yeah,
week or so. But they're a powerhouse, WWE.
yeah,
I don't know why they even care about AEW, but it's probably more to do with salaries and
yeah,
things like that. But that's kind of, I think that's kind of like a Paul Levesque deal where it's like he wants to prove he can do everything Vince did, and he wants to remonopolize the business because the
yeah,
AEW's who got him fired. He got
yeah,
kicked out on NXT and he got demoted because he lost the AEW on Wednesday nights.
yeah.
And
Because
I don't,
he had
in a
sold
in a
the
fight he
legends
was
to,
never going to be able to
yeah,
win. You know,
yeah.
it was
He,
wasn't even. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry, man. I didn't want to step on your toes.
Oh,
Because I was
you're
just gonna
fine,
say
man.
like,
If I'm
I'll
babbling,
just
just tell me to stop.
oh no, 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 because I was like, he tried to sell a bill of goods to Vince McMahon that, oh no, I'm able to handle him because look, we have the crew, we're WWE, we're gonna win.
Yeah.
We won the last war, so this should be easy. Totally neglecting that one of their top guys, John Moxley, had just jumped over there, and
Yeah.
we're comparing like developmental guys to like John Moxley, Chris
Yeah.
Jericho, Kenny Omega, like renowned, famous worldwide stars in the wrestling space. In the wrestling space,
Yeah,
I
I
hope
mean,
you can say
those guys
that.
had been punk rock waiting to come out for years, and suddenly they're available. I mean, and they did 10,000 for an indie show at All In that the Bucks and Cody put together.
Yeah,
For the Jericho Omega match, they grew 100,000 subscribers on New Japan World.
world.
They
Yeah,
I think people just fail to realize just how successful New Japan was prior to COVID,
yeah,
in changing the wrestling market. And those guys kind of created this market to exist. It was, if it wouldn't have been Tony Khan, it would have been some other billionaire who would have said, you know what, there's space here to
yeah,
grow. There's space for a different kind of product.
yeah,
I mean, WWE's never been a classic pro wrestling product, and that's one of the reasons for its success. But that also leaves a little bit of hole opening for somebody else.
yeah. When we talk about like WWE being worth at a stock price of $200, I think their highest level was $212. And then I think about like TKO. I think they're owned by the private equity Silver Lake, right?
Yeah,
Or
Endeavor and then Silver Lake, and then there's a
yeah,
lawsuit actually happening right well in the Delaware Court of Chancery between Silver Lake and Endeavor over the sale price of the stock value.
yeah,
And there's a lot of major people, George Soros, a lot of people are jumping in on this because you've seen the growth of the stock.
it's insane.
Silver Lake's thinking, hey, we didn't get what we should have got out of this. And you actually have, they're trying to look into other cases such as the Ring Boy case, the Janelle Grant case, to look at
Yeah,
information to say that their case is that that was one of the, that's not, excuse me, that's not the same shareholder stock case as that. There's also the other shareholder case, which is between Vince and his sale to TKO, which is
oh yeah,
he didn't take the best buy. He took a buy from a company that was willing to keep him in place with the federal investigation that was going on at the time, or may not still be going on. We've never got a clear answer on that, but it's probably dead. But but the but people believe in, hey, he didn't take the best buy for the stock price. He took the best buy for him that would keep him employed. So
yeah.
there's that suit. And that's going to be
It's kind of like
grabbing. They're probably going to try to get into the discovery of the Janelle Grant case, of the Ring Boy case, to get evidence of that. So that's where things kind of get interesting. There's a lot of legal things happening around TKO right now, a lot. Um,
Yeah,
and that's kind of the case when you're a $1 billion company. Everybody wants a part of that cash.
yeah. Because I saw one of the most recent news bits today was Silver Lake was thinking of acquiring EA as a gaming company, and we're talking if we're talking EA,
Wow.
WWE, all this thing, we're talking about like, and of course, you know, they're working with Saudi money on that, so it's like total global saturation. I think that plan was Saudi Arabia 2030, normalizing them. I forgot the name of that. There's a term for that, but I forgot what it was. But
It was
like,
a
just
private I know what you're saying, but yeah, that would have been the biggest private kind of, it would have been one of the, I saw some of the details of the deal. The Saudis are really changing a lot of things. They got a lot of money to
yeah,
throw around, and they're really interested in getting the U.S. And to get into big U.S. business. I think what people need to ask is, okay, we've gone down this road before with China, where we've kind of where we've let an authoritarian government into the World Trade Organization. We've let them we've let them into the auto business. We've made things easier for them for NAFTA, but they're not playing by the same rules. It's like, what's going with the Saudis. You also got to kind of question that. It's like, this isn't a democratically elected government. um there's not the same responsibilities here and there. And I think we learned a lot about the downfalls of that in the COVID crisis.
yeah,
So I think that's a thing to keep in mind, is like, okay, this may be great. This may be a great deal dollar wise. This is a great best deal, putting it all together for us as a country and for our economy and
yeah.
overall. And right now, I don't think there's anybody with any moral station that cares about that stuff. And that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, because like we're about to see like guys who did kind of fit that bill, like Bill Burr, accepted to go to the Riyadh Comedy Festival.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, like we're seeing guys like who have like billions and millions and millions, and they run like multimedia empires. Like Kevin Hart is going to the comedy festival, and you're just like, dude, they don't need that money, but I think it's something else where, because like I'm thinking about the EA deal, I'm thinking about Hollywood deal, and this is all just like a power play because, for lack of a better word, Saudi is becoming a big money player in the entertainment
Yeah.
business.
I've heard people break down to me where they think, Rahm Emanuel, Ari Emanuel runs, Endeavor. He's, his brother and all that. And maybe they see private equity, they see sports as a way of changing the world, whereas, the Arab Spring, whereas, kind of the neoconservative militarism didn't. And so these moves, bringing comedy over there, doing these other things, they see that as a possibility. Maybe that's kind of a goal they have with it. I don't know. I mean, it's shocking some of the names that were on that list that went to the Riyadh Festival, because these are people that you normally would think would not ever do this.
Yeah,
But maybe there's a reason for it. I don't know. We'll
yeah,
find out. But of course, I mean, I mean, I don't know how some of these guys are to keep their mouths shut. I guess the fact that there's AK-47s surrounding it might help, but
yeah,
but it's different. It's weird. To me, I just think we as a country need to make better decisions. And I think that private equity, I think that Wall Street has such a hedge hold on our economy, and looking at, just to where all the capital's at in our, in our, as far as the country goes, it's in the hands of a very small elect few people.
yeah,
And they're making decisions across the country for all of us, based on the capital they have and the wealth. And it's a situation where it's like, okay, just because they have the money, should they be allowed to steer this portion of the economy? To me,
yeah,
it's not. It's like, some of this stuff is why we vote politicians in. Some of this reason is why we vote people into office. This is why we have an election every 2 years for congressmen, and every 6 years for the Senate, and every 4 years for other positions like presidency.
yeah,
uh and it to them, me that a lot of these decisions should be made in that regard, not by people in Wall Street. And I'm sure they'd get the blessing no matter what, because that's just kind of how things work right now, especially with this current administration. But I'm hoping that changes. And I'm not a fan of the Democrats on this issue either. I mean, Chuck Schumer was, he bowed out of the way of the big beautiful bill. And all that, basically the whole purpose of that bill was to ensure that tax cuts for billionaires made in the first Trump administration lived on.
Yeah.
They attached a big bunch of promises to it, including massive spending cuts, and it didn't come through. And that's where we're at right now. And
Yeah.
it's like at some point, Mark Blythe, who's he's a Irish economist, said this right after the Brexit vote. And he says, and I hope it ever comes to this, but he's like, he goes, there's not a lot of high ground up in the Hamptons, and sooner or later they're gonna come for you. You can't
Yeah.
just keep, we can't just keep wages, lower and lower for inflation.
Yeah.
You can't just keep production skyrocketing. You can't just keep families working, spouses working 50, 60 hours a week and expect them to have nuclear
Yeah.
families like JD Vance wants to, I think he wants to put it as the 11th commandment, thou shalt procreate and, have a nuclear family. But uh, I've met him once. He's a hilarious dude. But
Uh,
anyway, I don't want to get you into weird territory here. But anyway, it's just I think it's decision making and needs to be looked at. And it's just
oh.
WWE and these comedians, they're kind of working in that universe of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I love getting weird with this. I love getting deep in the weeds because it's kind of what happens on here. And so you're in solid territory, brother. Because
Okay, good.
yeah, because like because we're getting into this place where in America, like 100,000 a year, it's nothing. I think one of the girls, I think WWE girl said she was making 75K a year, and like when you put in taxes, when you put in like all the expenses that come with becoming a professional wrestler, 75K all of a sudden becomes like nothing. You're just paying pretty much
Oh
for
yeah,
your house, and like
you're
if you
renting an
can even
apartment
afford
you're
your
never
house,
staying in.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and like we
that's
talk about
why
houses
it's
that you
why
can't even
I
afford a
I
house anymore.
I honestly, I'm going to start probably calling. I had somebody suggest this to me who was working in business and different investment, and I would love to know how many reporters and how many podcasters are shareholders with TKO stock. Because if you look at their arguments, a lot of the times it makes no sense as far as a worker perspective or wrestler perspective or a health perspective. It's like, what are it only makes good business sense if you're looking at it from a WWE manager perspective, not even a fan perspective. Is it a good
Yeah,
decision? And it's like, okay, maybe that's something we all ought to come clean with. I don't have any TKO stock. I don't own any stock. Maybe except for what's floating around in a 401k out of some place I worked. But
yeah,
um, but I think that's something we ought to more ask people is like, okay, how much do you got in TKO stock? I think that maybe, if you're reporting on wrestling, maybe we should ask them that. Ask them
yeah.
that and how many cheese boards they get every quarter, whenever it's their turn to celebrate or whatever that crap was. But,
Oh
the
man,
cheese board guys, um, you know,
like
so I'll give Ross Sapp a lot of credit for mocking that they sent that to him. I thought that was hilarious.
yeah,
But the other guys seem to take like pride in it, and I'm just like, whatever. But it's just like I mean, say who you are. That's why
yeah,
it's like people are like, how do you take hell over people are still making videos about my streaming story. It's been over 6 months. Like I had a friend of mine at work, came to me and he's like, there's a video just popped up on my home screen on YouTube, and it was like from last week, and it said BJ Bethel, if he got hit by a bus, no one would care. It was about my streaming numbers from 6 months ago, which is it's like what if you as far as a fan goes, what does that really do for you as a fan as a story? It's
I
not like I'm not dumping on the ending. It's just like as a fan, what's that story really say to you? It's
you're
just as only
just
is through the cult of this company or your view of
yeah,
having to be a combatant for them. And it's like it's 6 months old. Like I literally wrote that story and then went to bed. I didn't think about it for 2 days or a day later, and then all this hell's
Yeah,
going breaking loose. I think I had, one other reporter text me about it right off the bat. And then, we talked about the next day and I sourced the hell out of that story too, which is something that these people don't admit. And that's another thing is you can tell when you're really getting you can tell when you're hitting with the facts is when you're getting a lot of heat. If I
yeah,
was just putting out opinions that were stupid, people wouldn't care. But the
yeah.
fact is that they care because my reporting is pretty solid, and I have a good
Brilliant.
track record. And I was a journalist before. I've been a journalist for a long time. I've reported on a lot bigger stuff than this, and I mean, the streaming story isn't even that big a deal to me. The story I care about most in wrestling right now is Janelle Grant and Vince McMahon.
Yeah,
And Vince McMahon's, I want to know what happened with what's going on or what happened with his federal criminal case. I also want to know what's going on with, in the locker room and with people in WWE. I want to know what's going on with Lee Fitting and all these guys. That's important to me. It's like that,
yeah,
I mean, it's like people were taking me to task a couple weeks ago because, I didn't explain everything I meant in a tweet about Warner Brothers being possibly debt free by the time they get bought. I mean, but with the and it's like they kind of use that to come after me a bit, and I'm like, I don't really give a shit. I hate to tell you, but I don't really care about that. That's not a big story to me. Yeah, it's big in a business sense, but everybody's got that story. Everybody can get that stuff. You can read that in Puck or the World or Business or the Wall Street Journal or any or Sports Business Journal. I mean, the story that matters to me is the ones that are the human stories, or the ones where people are getting hurt and their lives are ruined, and that's like the Janelle Grant story. To me, that's the one
yeah,
I care about. And when people mess, and if what's funny is there's so many of these people mess that story up and misplace it, yet they never seem to get the backlash for that. And maybe somebody needs to deliver that to them. But to me, it's just like overall, I don't really give a damn about that. I'll do the business reporting because I get across of it and I got the sources for it.
yeah,
And people throw me nuggets and stuff. But to me, the big story is Janelle Grant. Vince
yeah,
McMahon's what happens with that, and what's WWE going to do about some of the people they've hired. To me, that's the
yeah,
big story in the business right now. And until something happens, um, I think the evolution of pro wrestling. I think as far as the business overall, I think there's what evolution are we how's this business going to evolve in the next few years? I think also how's the global economy going to affect it? What's the media environment going to affect it? I think
yeah,
WWE and AEW are set up pretty well right now. They have contracts in place, which is a lot better. A lot of places are. But by the time those contracts come to the end, the media environment's going to change two or three times by then. You
yeah.
know,
Because we don't know what the end game is gonna be, but right now, WWE has multiple billion-dollar deals. AEW has multiple billion dollars coming in. So for right now, business is good, and we see like in terms of AEW, we see like the advertiser, the advertisers for AEW are growing like showing I think a higher level of income for their audience. So they're getting like more big brands like say Tide, Lincoln Navigator, Downy, Dawn, Dish Soap, uh, all these things. And like what's so weird about this to me is it felt like a kind of a coordinated attack on you to like kind of disavow you when all you're doing is just reporting fact, which is
I
like
mean,
what we
if
see. That's what we see like as also like a in like mainstream what happens with mainstream news, something gets reported and then other things come
yeah,
out to attack it and downplay it. And like it's sort of it's it's so funny to see the same strategy used within pro wrestling. And like those are the lowest stakes in pro wrestling is the actual business of pro wrestling. And what you're talking about, like the whole human aspect of it, like Janelle Grant got physically sexually abused and manipulated by Vince McMahon. I'll say allegedly because I don't want to I don't want to
I
face
mean,
that
it's alleged.
disciplinary.
It wasn't criminally proven in court, but they've also had a
Yeah,
chance to come out and deny specifics about her claims. And
yeah,
and and so far, the most that we've heard is that she's a jilted ex-girlfriend.
yeah.
So that's not really denying much. But
That
that case right now, it's stayed. Well, while the judge determines whether they're going to allow discovery for the arbitration hearing. That's where they'll decide whether this will proceed in a arbitration hearing per the NDA that both Janelle and Vince signed. I'd say, given precedent as of lately and federal law. I think it's going to be a hard push for WWE and Vince to win that one, but there is a couple circumstances that might help him with that.
Yeah,
But like I said, it's that's the sides that matter to me the most. I
yeah,
mean, and Janelle Grant's probably one of the most courageous people to come across this business.
yeah. When you're talking about like abuse and facing your abusers and like you're gonna be
Yeah,
dragged through the mud, and that's where I feel like you have the courage to come and say like, and then also like we talk about the ring boy scandal, right? Where we're
yeah,
talking about men from decades ago who were taken advantage by when they were children by grown men and abused. And not only were the abusers like protected by Vince McMahon, I think what did Linda McMahon say, that they were not liable, they were not responsible for the safety of these children that were
yeah.
doing things within their company, and I'm just like, that's disgusting. And she's the head of the Department of
Their
Education,
case
and
is that, well, what's going on with that is the case is in Maryland. They're trying to deny. They're trying to claim that this they the case isn't properly tried in the right location because Linda or Vince weren't doing business there. But I'm not even sure how many of the victims for thumb there. But um, and one of the reasons why the victims are trying it there is because they had a law change a few years ago where basically they lifted the statute of limitations to sue somebody for negligence in civil court if it came to a sex assault case. So that ended up going before the Maryland Supreme Court. The Maryland Supreme Court said this law is fine. Our state legislature passed it. That allowed this to continue, and the side that's representing TKO, Vince, and Linda are saying, well, we still need to change the venue because this isn't where this case should most appropriately be tried. I imagine they'll probably move to for try to get it in Connecticut or probably most likely or federal, or in the case, I don't know if they have the same law there, so then it would render the suit moot. But um but on the other hand, they worked WWE worked Maryland a lot. There was they worked Baltimore was a huge WWE city, in the 80s
yeah,
when, a lot of these people that have been alleged to have done this behavior has happened. There's interview aspects that have been applied to this. Um, there's I've talked to some of the people that were who were at center of this, a long time ago. And the split, Vince was telling people on this, he's telling different journalists. One of them was Phil Mushnick, and Mushnick testified in court under this that he told him that that Linda and him both knew what was going on, and they brought Mel Phillips back under this promise that he wouldn't behave in the same manner anymore. And from what I
that's
gather, is he
disgusting.
continued to agree in that manner. They finally fired him after they settled with Tom Cole, um, which was, you talk about tragic, horrible circumstances. But I'm just glad. I'm glad these guys are getting their day in court. I'm hoping this
Yeah,
sticks and they can stick it there. And I'm also hoping this leads to some changes in how sex assault case law are handled.
yeah,
When you're looking at this amount of trauma and damage to people's lives, I think the statute of limitations really needs to be changed, whether that's in criminal court but also in civil court.
yeah,
And that's one reason why I think you're not seeing more people probably go after some individuals in the wrestling business than you have, is because of the statutes of limitations in certain states and things like that. Or else we'd probably be see a little bit more than we are seeing right now.
yeah.
Hi, hello.
This is
Yeah,
Doc, and I have a special message from my friend MJ, who's looking to do some, it's nice to have a little scratch when your little fur baby's on the mend. So I'm gonna give the floor to the NB who you envy, MJ. Go ahead and take it away.
Hello. I am currently raising money basically for my cat needs a surgery in in about a week's time, and Although the operation is mostly funded, but it's just her aftercare and medication and things. We just want to make sure that we've kind of got enough for that and stuff to make sure she's taken care of. But I've just got a tip jar on Kofi or coffee, however you want to pronounce it, which is at co-fi.com/wrestle-trash. And also, I've got a shirt for sale on there with the Lucha Boo. My cat is called Boo. And it's got a little luchador wearing luchador mask wearing cat on there, and it's very cute, and you should buy one. But yeah, any help is very much appreciated. But if not, that's also fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the reins here and say no. Make sure that this gets all paid for. Please donate as much as you can, as much as you want, but please donate. Do what you can. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me as well. I've had a lovely time.
Mitko, Mitko, Mitko,
I gotta tell you this because BJ Bethel, you're the man. I love having you on here.
Don't say
Because like usually when we talk about wrestling media, it's like puff pieces, people not wanting to lose their connections, people not wanting to make anybody mad because they want to have that access, whether it be to WWE talent, even AEW talent, because like it's whatever. And like for you to be able to come out here and just be like, nah, fuck it, I'm me, I'm reporting my news. This is what I do.
I mean,
So
I'll be honest. A lot of these people aren't trained to do. They haven't done this kind of stuff that I've had to do before. I mean, I've had to
yeah,
go to car crash sites. I've had to go to, major crime scenes. I've had to report on a mass shooting. I've had to go do, I report on a mass shooting where two of the victims were people that I knew. I
yeah,
mean, this isn't something are used to dealing with in wrestling media. I think a lot of people have done a lot better job than are getting credit for.
yeah,
I think John Alba's done a great job. I think Sean Sapp's done a good job on the Grant case and everything like that. I think
yeah,
Dave Meltzer's he continues to be the gold standard in pro
yeah,
wrestling. But I come from a different background, so this is like normal everyday stuff for me. I don't think
yeah,
it's fair in a lot of cases. I mean, I do when it comes to like the post show scrums and things like that. That's where I get a little teed off because it's an opportunity to ask real hard hitting questions and people just aren't doing it. They're
yeah,
purposely avoiding it. But otherwise, it's like I can see why some people avoid these questions. Like Sam Shipman and Mel of the Power Bombshells podcast have been covering these sex assault issues in wrestling long before I have, and they know
yeah,
more about the wrestling scene from the indies on up than I do. I mean,
yeah,
I think other than maybe Brian Alvarez, I think Sam watches more wrestling a week than I do, and I've watched in the last year, or probably more than anybody in the business. Sam's watched, she's on that level where she's recapping and writing out that many shows.
yeah.
There's a lot
That's
of great people, and I mean, you're yourself included. You're very knowledgeable of the business. You're doing a lot, and you also know these outside issues and how this plays in the
yeah,
bigger things of the game, and you have a powerful voice. So I think that, and I take a lot of heat. I get a lot of that, but I'm also used to it. I'm used to having elected officials mad at me or cops mad at me or somebody mad at me, I mean, or football
yeah.
parents, which are, sports parents are probably the scariest of them all. But,
I
but
could
just,
imagine.
yeah, trust me, yeah, I'll have to say, may I'll have to do it. If we do this again, I'll tell you some of the scary things I've gotten over the
Oh
years,
man.
just, but it's just, I mean, this is a totally different thing than I think people signed up for. And they didn't have the knowledge of knowing what we went through when we were covering this business in the early 2000s when all these deaths were happening. I mean, we were having 3, 4 guys die a week, and these are people in their 40s and 50s or 30s. And it was, I mean, I was losing friends of mine. And it
Yeah,
got to the point where I just quit covering it, and I didn't watch wrestling match for 10 some years.
yeah,
I think finally I watched one. My brother told me, hey, there's this New Japan pay per view It's called Wrestle Kingdom 9. They're going to have it on in the States. You need to watch it with me. And I'm like, I really don't want to watch this because you need to see this guy Nakamura and you need to see this guy Tanahashi. Okay, whatever. And I'm like, holy crap,
Yeah,
and that kind of what brought me back, at least watching. But it but I think it's kind of unfair to some people to state that. But I think a lot of people are growing up, they're asking harder questions, they're doing
yeah,
a much better job. And I think it
yeah,
goes, there's guys at Fightful, there's guys at SE Scoops, Corey, those dudes, they're doing a lot better and they're learning on their feet and they're doing it in an area where they're not having any mentors to help them.
yeah,
It's really hard to do this when you're getting
yeah,
buried for it online in this massive social media environment. It's not easy to do. So
yeah,
I get angry at some people, especially the people that are, you know, kind of like purposely sloshing things around. But overall, it's hard to expect people to jump into this thing. Kind of like you're basically going from what's covering almost like an entertainment fashion to having to cover it in like a criminal political story, and
yeah,
it's not an easy adjustment. It's almost
yeah,
impossible.
yeah. You kind of have to like part yourself and like separate yourself from the fan, from what you're reporting the news. That's how I feel.
Yeah,
And
you're correct.
what part of my fandom of you is also you were doing reviews at RogerEbert.com. You were doing
Oh,
movie
thanks.
reviews, and I love that. And we're on spooky season. It's pumpkin season. It's spooky season. So if you have like maybe two or three movies you could recommend for spooky season, that's like something that you would watch on the.
I will. It's funny. I'm not a huge fan of the horror genre at all. I
Okay.
just it's funny. I get freaked out by gross horror movies, but I've seen a lot of gross things at car accident scenes, and it's not freaked me out.
Hey,
Like
yeah.
I was running around when my wife was getting a C-section, that didn't freak me out at all. But it's like a horror movie. It's kind of like I
Hey,
don't know what it is.
my
But if
wife's the
I
same
there is
way.
some, but I've watched a bazillion movie. Yeah, I used to review movies, and I maybe was an
Oh, but
amateur critic
but
there
you
for
know
a
what?
while. But
You know what? Since you don't watch horror movies, what about the horrors of war movies? Because I know that
okay,
was
we'll
something
talk
you're
about
talking
war
about.
movies. Well, I'll tell you what, my favorite probably kind of horror movie, one that I would always put out, I think it's supremely underrated, is The Faculty.
Oh
It came
yeah,
out in the late 1990s, early 2000s,
yeah. I
and it
love
had a
Usher in there.
major cast: Elijah Wood, um, uh, uh,
Usher, John
Elijah
Stewart.
Wood, yeah, Josh Hartnett was in it. He played. This was probably one of his best roles. He plays kind of the school kind of bad boy.
Yeah,
There's so many stars. Robert Patrick, like you said, John Stewart's in it. So's Salma Hayek in
oh
smaller
yeah,
roles. It's
it's
a horror
good.
movie about aliens kind of taking invading a high school, and it's
Yeah,
super entertaining. It's fun. And the cast is so good, and it's a great watch. Um, that was one I think I wrote about at Ebert.
yeah.
If it's probably still up there if you go to RogerEbert.com.
I'll
I'd say
definitely look that
also
up,
the
man.
original Scream movie I think it was a filmatric masterpiece. I think it was well
Yeah,
done. I think it was kind of a genre flick outside the genre, a deconstruction of the horror genre in almost a comedic fashion.
yeah,
It's really hard to describe it. It's a very, it was a very timeless movie. I think the sequels kind of diminished the original a bit, but it was still a kind of really great movie. War movies, I'm definitely much more a part to, but so what would you like? What
I,
movies I should recommend? I mean, I guess Veterans Day is coming up in another couple
yeah.
months, but
With Veterans Day and Memorial Day past us. I'm gonna name the war. You give me a movie to watch. Okay, I'm gonna go
okay.
with. Oh man, that sounds so bad, but let's go with Desert Storm One.
Oh, Desert Storm 1. Oh, I just did a list like this the other day on Blue Sky. Desert Storm 1, I would go with Live from Baghdad. It was an HBO movie. It stars uh, Michael Keaton's in it, as
Yeah,
well as he played D-Day and I'm terrible with names right now. He played D-Day and an Animal House. It also had oh man, I think it was Tim Burton's wife. She's in a ton of movies. She's in Fight Club. They play basically the movies
Helena
about
Bottom Carter.
see Helen Bonham Connor. Basically, the movie's about CNN and its coverage from Baghdad during the Gulf War as the
All
war
right.
was happening. It was kind of revolutionary at the time. You could see like the war happening in real time, and actually, it was crazy to believe this, but George Bush and Saddam Hussein were watching the coverage of the CNN's coverage of the war. They were watching the actual coverage to follow what was going on.
That's
They were
nuts.
doing all this from a hotel with soldiers trying to stalk them down through a window. You know, it was amazing. It's one of my favorite journalism movies. It's one of my favorite. It might be the greatest movie HBO ever made for its broadcast, which is saying a lot. They've
Yeah.
made some amazing stuff, but that
Yeah.
would be my Desert Storm pick.
And then I have two more. And then, well, I don't want to keep holding you on because I know you're a busy man. So I'm going to ask you like my last two questions because I thought that was wonderful. We'll continue this more
Oh, thank you.
question. I will,
Appreciate that.
because I always respect my guests. We, for me, one of the best times of my life, one of my favorite times a day is dinner, right? And my
Yeah.
favorite part of dinner is always dessert. So my question for you is, what is your favorite dessert?
Hot fudge cake from Frisch's.
Ooh, that's what's up.
There's the
Um,
big boy restaurants that are famous. The ones in Southwest Ohio, they just went out of business, but they were called Frisch's. They had the Frisch's Big Boy and hot fudge cake from Frisch's. It was ice cream with hot fudge and chocolate cake.
yeah,
And I'm not
that's
much of a dessert guy, but I love that dessert like you wouldn't believe. I was all over it.
that's that's something that's amazing. It's because I have the sugar, so I always ask this of everybody because I have to live through people to get that kind of thing. Because
Yeah.
sugar-free stuff is not as good, but I make do.
Well, I'm sorry to hear
Um,
that, man. I hope you're handling that
oh,
okay.
oh no, that's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I have my insulin. My finally my last question for you is, if a rainbow came out of the sky with a message from BJ Bethel, what would that be?
Um, if a rainbow came out of the sky with a message from me,
Yeah.
um, I would put listen to more, buddy guy.
Listen to more, buddy guy. Man, that's wonderful. I want to thank you for coming on to my show. I want to tell everybody, please subscribe to this guy's Substack. He has so much news on
Thank
there.
you.
He has so much going on there, and follow him. I'm doing your plugs for you because I don't want to say I love you, man, but I am such a big fan of yours that I do follow you
Oh,
on
appreciate
all
that,
these
Larry. I
platforms.
really do, man.
Yeah,
I've watched your podcast leading up to this. You do a great job. I like what you guys get into a lot of different subjects. It's very thought provoking, and and thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And if you ever need anything, just let me know.
yeah. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. The great BJ Bethel. Follow him on Blue Sky at BJ Bethel. Um, Follow him on X at BJ Bethel Tweets, and
That's correct. Yes.
follow him on his Substack.
Man, you got this radio thing down pat, man. You need to talk to some stations. But yeah, you can contact me bbethel.substack.com. You can also get me at SE Scoops. We also go on YouTube, look for the Rent Free podcast with BJ Bethel and Ruben J. I'll probably having some more interviews coming out here soon. I think some of them I think everybody will get a kick out of. So, but Larry, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me on, man. And
Man, thank you,
keep
brother.
on keeping on, dude.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I enjoyed this, and yeah, man, keep fighting the good fight. That's all I can
I
say.
appreciate
Journalism
that.
is the last bastion of free speech, and when we lose
There we
that, we
go.
lose everything. So thank you
Yeah.
for what you do, man. Keep fighting the good
Okay.
fight.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.